The engine was worth more than most people earned in a lifetime, and it was dead. Evelyn Cross stood in the private underground garage of Cross Industries headquarters, her reflection distorted in the supercar's flawless midnight blue paint, watching 8 of the world's most expensive engineers fail. In 4 hours, she needed to arrive at the Meridian Tower in this exact vehicle, a symbol, a statement, a billion-dollar handshake made visible. The car's silence wasn't mechanical. It was political. It was war. And somewhere behind the chaos of diagnostic equipment and rising voices, a man in a gray janitor's uniform walked past holding his daughter's hand, seeing everything, noticed by no one. If you want to know how a single father who cleaned floors saved an empire by listening to what everyone else refused to hear, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The garage beneath Cross Industries' corporate tower existed in permanent twilight. Fluorescent panels cast sterile light across polished concrete, and the air tasted of oil, rubber, and the particular tension that comes when expensive things stop working. Evelyn Cross stood perfectly still in the center of controlled chaos, her charcoal suit immaculate, her expression carved from ice. Only her hands betrayed her, fingers pressed together at her sides, knuckles pale. 4 hours, she said quietly. The words cut through the murmur of technical conversation like a blade. I need this vehicle operational in 4 hours. Marcus Chen, lead engineer and the man she paid $250,000 annually to prevent exactly this situation, straightened from where he'd been hunched over a tablet displaying cascading error codes. Sweat darkened his collar despite the garage's climate control. Ms. Cross, the diagnostic systems aren't identifying any fault in the primary circuits. The fuel delivery is optimal. The electrical systems are reading green across the board, but the car won't start. Evelyn's voice remained level, almost gentle. People who didn't know her might mistake it for patience. People who did know her recognized it as the sound before the storm. I'm aware. What I'm asking for is a solution. We're running secondary diagnostics now, Marcus said, gesturing toward the 3 engineers clustered around the open hood of the Valenti Phantom, a vehicle so exclusive only 17 existed worldwide. The algorithm is processing every possible algorithms. Evelyn stepped closer to the car, her heels sharp against concrete. I'm looking at 8 of the most brilliant mechanical minds I could hire, surrounded by equipment that cost more than a suburban home. And what I'm hearing is that you're waiting for a computer to tell you what's wrong. The garage went quiet. One of the younger engineers, a woman named Sarah Michaels, who'd been with the company only 6 months, flushed and stared harder at her screen. With respect, Ms. Cross, Marcus said carefully, these systems are extraordinarily complex. The Phantom's engine management involves 17 separate computers networked through... I don't need the specifications, Marcus. I lived through the procurement process. Evelyn circled the vehicle slowly, her gaze traveling across its perfect lines. What I need is for this machine to do what I paid $4 million for it to do. Start, drive, arrive. She stopped, one hand resting lightly on the car's roof. Through the tinted windows, she could see the cream leather interior, the dashboard of brushed titanium, the steering wheel wrapped in hand-stitched Napa leather. Every detail had been specified, approved, perfected. The Phantom wasn't simply transportation. It was a statement of intent, a demonstration of the precision and excellence that defined Cross Industries' brand. Arriving at the Thornton merger meeting in anything less than this particular vehicle would communicate weakness. In business at Evelyn's level, symbols mattered as much as substance. Run the diagnostics again, she said. All of them. I'll be in my office. She turned toward the elevator, then paused as movement caught her periphery. On the far side of the garage, near the service entrance that led to the maintenance corridors, a man in a gray janitor's uniform was pushing a cleaning cart. Beside him walked a little girl, maybe 7 years old, wearing a purple backpack nearly as large as she was. The girl's hand was tucked into her father's, and she was looking at everything with the careful attention children have when they're in places adults have forgotten to really see. Evelyn felt a flicker of irritation. The garage was supposed to be secured during maintenance operations. She made a mental note to speak with building services about access protocols, then dismissed the thought. She had larger problems than a janitor finishing his shift. The elevator doors closed behind her, and the garage returned to the sound of keyboards, muttered consultations, and the soft hum of diagnostic equipment searching for answers that refused to appear. Noah Reed had worked at Cross Industries for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. He knew this because his daughter Lily had made him a calendar for his first day, decorating it with careful drawings of buildings and stick figures with mops, and she updated it religiously every week. The calendar hung on their refrigerator at home, a monument to her pride in her father's work and his commitment to being there, to being present, to being the parent she needed. He'd learned to be invisible here, not because he was ashamed, he'd never been ashamed of honest work, but because invisibility was a kind of courtesy. People working at the speed and pressure of Cross Industries didn't want to navigate around the help. They wanted clean floors, empty trash bins, and the seamless maintenance of their environment without having to acknowledge the labor that made it possible. Noah had become expert at reading a room, understanding when to clean and when to come back, learning the rhythms of the building the way a musician learns a song. Tonight was different. Tonight, Lily's school had called. A pipe had burst in the building, classes were canceled tomorrow, and could someone pick her up early? Noah's ex-wife, Diane, was in Seattle for work, unreachable until tomorrow. His sister was dealing with her own crisis. So he'd spoken with his supervisor, explained the situation, and brought Lily with him to finish his evening shift. She'd been perfect, as always, quiet where she needed to be, curious in ways that made him proud, patient in ways that broke his heart a little. 7 years old, and she already understood that sometimes life required you to adapt, to make the best of circumstances, to find wonder in unexpected places. "Dad?" Lily whispered as they crossed the garage toward the service corridor that would take them to the break room where he'd left his things. "Why are all those people looking at that car?" Noah glanced toward the cluster of engineers. He'd noticed the Phantom earlier, impossible not to, really. The vehicle was a work of art, the kind of machine that made him remember a different life, different choices. He'd recognized several of the engineers too. Good people, technically brilliant, the kind of minds that could solve problems he couldn't begin to conceptualize. "They're trying to fix something," he said softly, guiding Lily toward the corridor. But Lily had stopped walking. She was staring at the car, her head tilted in that particular way she had when something wasn't right. Noah had learned to trust that tilt. Lily heard the world differently than most people. She noticed patterns, inconsistencies, the small things that didn't quite fit. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked. "The sound is wrong," she said. Noah paused. The engineers were talking in low voices, their words blending together. Equipment hummed. The ventilation system whispered, but underneath it all, he closed his eyes the way he used to when he was younger, when listening was everything. The building had its own voice if you knew how to hear it. Pipes carried specific frequencies. HVAC systems created particular harmonies. Machinery spoke in rhythms that told you stories if you paid attention. And there, beneath the obvious sounds, something was off. A vibration that shouldn't exist, a frequency that didn't belong. Noah opened his eyes and looked at his daughter. "Good ear," he said quietly. He should have kept walking, he knew that. His shift ended in 20 minutes, and Lily needed dinner, homework time, and her bedtime routine. He had no business involving himself in problems that weren't his responsibility, that existed so far above his pay grade, they might as well be occurring in a different atmosphere. But Lily was watching the engineers with that focused attention she gave to puzzles, and Noah found himself remembering another garage, another lifetime, when he'd been the young genius everyone called when machines refused to cooperate, when listening had been more than a survival skill. It had been a gift he was building a career around, before everything had changed, before loss had taught him that some things mattered more than genius, more than ambition, more than the future everyone had predicted for him. "Can you wait here for just a minute?" he asked Lily. She nodded, settling onto a bench near the wall, pulling out the library book she always carried. Noah crossed the garage, his footsteps quiet, his presence still invisible to people focused entirely on screens and systems and the problem refusing to yield. He stopped a respectful distance from the engineers, waiting to be noticed. Sarah Michaels saw him first. Her eyes flicked up from her tablet, registered the gray uniform, dismissed him, returned to her data. But Marcus Chen, who'd been with the company long enough to have seen Noah cleaning these floors 1,000 times, glanced over with tired eyes. "Can we help you?" Marcus asked. Not unkind, but clearly preoccupied. Noah felt the weight of the moment. This was where he should apologize for interrupting, offer to come back later, return to his own world. But Lily was watching, and the sound was wrong, and somewhere deep in the parts of himself he'd thought he'd left behind, something stirred. "I think I might hear something," Noah said quietly. The garage went still. Not silent. The equipment still hummed. The ventilation still whispered, but the quality of attention shifted. Engineers looked up. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. One of the senior technicians, a man named Robert, whose office Noah cleaned every Thursday, actually laughed. "You hear something," Robert said. Not a question. A dismissal wrapped in polite syllables. "In the engine," Noah continued, keeping his voice level, "there's a vibration that doesn't match the rest of the idle signature. Like something's interfering with the timing, but not enough to trigger the diagnostic systems." Marcus's expression shifted from tired to carefully neutral. "We've run complete acoustic analysis," he said. "The sound profile matches factory specifications." "For when the engine's running," Noah agreed. "But when it's trying to start, when the starter motor engages, there's a harmonic that suggests something in the timing chain assembly is catching, just fractionally, just enough to prevent ignition." The elevator chimed. Evelyn Cross stepped out, her phone pressed to her ear, still managing her empire even as one critical piece refused to cooperate. She was speaking quietly, her words too low to hear, but her presence changed the atmosphere the way a storm front changes air pressure. She ended her call and approached the car, registering the scene. Her engineers clustered together, and Noah standing slightly apart in his gray uniform, meeting Marcus's skeptical gaze. "Is there a problem?" Evelyn asked. Her tone suggested that if there was, she expected it to be resolved immediately. "No, Ms. Cross," Marcus said quickly. "It's just a—" He hesitated, clearly trying to find professional language for the situation. One of the maintenance staff thought he heard something. Evelyn's gaze shifted to Noah. Really looked at him, perhaps for the first time despite the fact that he'd cleaned her office every week for 3 years. Her eyes were gray, sharp, the color of smoke or steel depending on the light. "Heard something," she repeated. "Yes, ma'am," Noah said. He could feel Lily watching from her bench, and he stood a little straighter, wanting her to see him meeting this moment with dignity. "In the timing chain assembly, it's subtle. The diagnostic systems wouldn't catch it because it's mechanical, not electronic. But there's a catch, maybe 1/10 of a millimeter, that's preventing the engine from achieving the rotational velocity needed for ignition." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Around them, the garage held its breath. "You're suggesting," she said slowly, "that 8 engineers with advanced degrees and equipment worth more than most homes have missed something you can hear?" It wasn't mockery, Noah realized. It was assessment. Evelyn Cross hadn't built an empire by dismissing information based on its source. She'd built it by evaluating data ruthlessly and acting on what proved true. "I'm suggesting," Noah said carefully, "that sometimes the simplest problems hide in plain sound, and that maybe, if you have 30 seconds, I could show you what I mean." The request was absurd. Noah knew that. Everyone in the garage knew that. Evelyn Cross didn't have 30 seconds to waste on the theories of a janitor, not with a billion-dollar meeting approaching and her symbol of power sitting dead. But something flickered in Evelyn's expression, curiosity maybe, or the desperation of someone who'd exhausted all logical options and found herself considering illogical ones. 30 seconds, she said. "After that, I need solutions, not theories." Noah moved toward the car and the engineers stepped back, creating space that felt more like giving a stage than making room. He was intensely aware of every eye on him, of Lily watching with complete faith, of the weight of this moment in ways he couldn't quite articulate. He didn't ask for tools. Instead, he knelt beside the car's front driver's side, pressing his ear against the hood. Closed his eyes. Listened. There it was. The wrongness. A frequency that didn't belong. A vibration creating interference like a radio signal bleeding into another station. He followed the sound the way he used to, letting it tell him its story, show him its source. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the hood. Marcus, who'd been standing closest, exchanged a glance with Evelyn. She nodded once. The hood was already up from earlier diagnostics, and Noah carefully reached into the engine compartment, his hands moving with the certainty of muscle memory that never quite fades. The Phantom's engine was a masterpiece, a V12 that produced 800 horsepower through engineering so precise it bordered on art. Noah didn't touch anything critical. He simply found the timing chain cover, following the sound to its source, and there, a mounting bolt, fractionally loose, not enough to fail, not enough to show on any sensor, but enough to create resonance at specific frequencies, enough to interfere with the precise timing required for ignition. Noah pulled a small multi-tool from his belt, something he carried for basic maintenance tasks, and selected the appropriate driver. 3/4 of a turn. That was all it took. A tiny adjustment, a correction measured in fractions of millimeters. He stepped back, closing the hood carefully. "Try it now," he said quietly. Marcus moved to the driver's door, exchanging another glance with Evelyn. The skepticism was still there, but it was tempered now by something else. Hope, maybe. Or just the desire to be done with this problem. The door opened. Marcus slid into the driver's seat. He pressed the start button. The Phantom's engine roared to life with a sound like controlled thunder, smooth and perfect and utterly undeniable. It settled into an idle that purred, every cylinder firing in precise sequence, the whole machine breathing with mechanical perfection. The garage went absolutely silent, except for the engine's song. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, staring at the dashboard in disbelief. Sarah Michaels had actually taken a step backward, her tablet forgotten at her side. Robert's earlier dismissive laugh had died somewhere in his throat, leaving his expression blank with shock. Evelyn Cross stood perfectly still, her eyes moving from the running car to Noah and back again. When she spoke, her voice was very quiet. "How did you know?" Noah looked at her, this woman who commanded empires from behind glass walls, and saw something he recognized. The same thing he'd seen in his own mirror years ago, when he was the young genius everyone called, before life had taught him different lessons. The belief that if you were smart enough, if you had enough resources, if you brought enough expertise to bear, you could solve anything. "I listened," Noah said simply. He could have said more, could have explained about harmonic frequencies, about how years of working with engines had taught him to hear what instruments couldn't measure, about how sometimes the most sophisticated diagnostics missed the simplest problems. But Lily was waiting, and his shift was over, and he'd done what felt right in the moment. That was enough. "Wait," Evelyn said as Noah turned to go. "What's your name?" "Noah Reed, ma'am." "Noah Reed." She repeated it like she was filing it somewhere important. "You're in maintenance?" "Janitorial services. Third shift mostly. Tonight's a bit unusual. My daughter's school had an emergency, so she's with me." For the first time, Evelyn's gaze shifted to where Lily sat on the bench, and something in her expression softened by a fraction. The girl who was looking at the car earlier. "Yes, ma'am. She's the one who first noticed the sound was wrong." Evelyn walked closer, and Noah saw her clearly now. Not the CEO, but the person beneath the armor. She looked tired, he realized. Not just from tonight's crisis, but from something deeper, something chronic. "Mr. Reed," she said, "do you have a moment to speak privately?" Noah glanced at Lily, who gave him a small thumbs up. "Yes, ma'am." Evelyn led him to the far side of the garage, out of earshot from the engineers who were now clustered around the Phantom, speaking in low, confused voices. When she turned back to face him, her expression was unreadable. "I'm going to ask you something direct," she said, "and I'd appreciate an honest answer. Who are you, really?" Noah blinked. "I'm not sure I understand." "People don't just hear that." She gestured toward the car. "Not without significant training, significant experience. Marcus Chen has 2 PhDs and 15 years with performance engines, and he missed it. Sarah Michaels came to us from Tesla's Advanced Development Program. Robert literally wrote textbooks on automotive systems, and you," she paused, "you diagnosed and fixed a problem they couldn't even identify in about 90 seconds. "I got lucky," Noah said. "No." Evelyn's voice was firm. "Luck is random. That was expertise. So I'm asking again, Who are you really? Noah was quiet for a moment, feeling the weight of the question. He could deflect, could maintain the simple narrative that let him stay invisible, could protect the privacy he'd built around the life he'd chosen, but something in Evelyn's directness demanded honesty. I used to work with engines, he said finally, a long time ago, before my daughter was born. Where? Different places. Started in my grandfather's garage, worked my way through school doing automotive repair, got a scholarship to MIT's mechanical engineering program. After that, he hesitated. After that, I worked for a few companies doing performance development, racing teams mostly, some aerospace work. Evelyn's eyes had narrowed. MIT, racing teams, aerospace. She spoke each word carefully. And now you're cleaning floors in my building. It's honest work, Noah said, hearing the defensiveness in his own voice. It pays my rent, lets me be there for my daughter, gives us stability. I'm not criticizing, Evelyn said. I'm trying to understand. People with your background don't typically transition into janitorial services unless something significant happened. Noah felt the old familiar tightness in his chest, the grief that had learned to live quietly, but never quite left. My wife died, he said, the words still difficult after all this time. Lily was 2. I was working 80-hour weeks, traveling constantly, chasing the next big project. And then one morning, Sarah, my wife, didn't wake up. Brain aneurysm. The doctor said it was instant, that she didn't suffer. He paused, aware that Lily was too far away to hear, but lowering his voice anyway. After that, I had a choice. Keep pushing for the career everyone expected. Put Lily in full-time care. Be the parent who showed up for birthdays and holidays if I was lucky. Or step back, find work that let me be present, let me be the father she needed. There wasn't any question about which one mattered more. Evelyn was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. So you walked away from everything you'd built. I walked toward what mattered, Noah corrected gently. Everything else was just noise. For a long moment, Evelyn didn't respond. Around them, the garage continued its activity. Engineers running new diagnostics on the now-functioning Phantom, probably trying to understand what had been wrong, covering their bases in case the problem returned. But in this small bubble of conversation, there was only silence and the weight of choices made, lives lived, priorities chosen. Mr. Reed, Evelyn said finally, I have a meeting in 3.5 hours that will determine whether Cross Industries acquires Thornton Dynamics or whether our competitors do. This merger represents 18 months of negotiation, due diligence, and strategic positioning. It's worth $1.3 billion in immediate value and potentially twice that in long-term market position. She gestured toward the Phantom. That car was supposed to be part of my entrance, part of the statement I'm making about precision and excellence. You fixed it in 90 seconds. I'm going to have HR pull your file tonight, and tomorrow I'd like to speak with you about other opportunities within the company. Noah felt a familiar pull, the siren song of recognition, of being valued for skills he'd thought he'd left behind. But he also felt the weight of Lily's library book, the carefully maintained calendar on their refrigerator, the stable routine that let him be the parent she deserved. Ms. Cross, he said carefully, I appreciate that, but I'm not looking to change positions. I'm happy where I am. You're happy cleaning floors? I'm happy being available when my daughter needs me. I'm happy having predictable hours, no travel, no pressure to sacrifice family for advancement. The work I do now lets me be the father I couldn't be before. That's not something I'm willing to trade. Evelyn studied him with those sharp gray eyes, and Noah had the sense of being truly seen, not assessed for usefulness, but recognized as a person with priorities and boundaries and a life that mattered beyond his utility to Cross Industries. I respect that, she said finally, but the offer stands. If circumstances change, if you ever want to explore other options, my door is open. Thank you, ma'am. Evelyn extended her hand and Noah shook it, her grip firm, professional, the handshake of someone who meant what she said. Thank you, Mr. Reed, she said, for the car, for the honesty, and for the reminder that sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from unexpected places. She turned back toward the elevator, already pulling out her phone. already returning to the thousand demands on her attention. Noah watched her go, then walked back to where Lily was waiting, still absorbed in her book. "All done, sweetheart," he said. "Ready to head home?" Lily looked up, her eyes bright. "You fixed it, didn't you? The car." "We fixed it," Noah corrected. "You're the one who noticed the sound was wrong first." She beamed at that, and Noah felt the warmth he always felt when she smiled. The knowledge that whatever he'd given up, whatever path he'd walked away from, this was better. This mattered more. They left through the service corridor, Noah's cleaning cart pushed ahead of him, Lily's hand tucked safely in his. Behind them, the Phantom purred in mechanical perfection, and engineers tried to understand what had been wrong, and Evelyn Cross prepared to make her billion-dollar statement with the precision and excellence she'd built her empire around. But Noah had already moved on, his mind on dinner, homework, and bedtime stories. The garage had been a brief intersection of worlds, a moment when different lives touched and recognized something in each other. But moments pass, and lives continue, and Noah had learned long ago that the most important thing wasn't the moments. It was what you did with all the time in between. What he did was be a father. Everything else was just noise. 3 hours later, Evelyn Cross stood in the executive parking garage of the Meridian Tower, watching as Derek Thornton circled the Phantom with the appreciation of someone who understood both engineering and theater. "Beautiful machine," Thornton said, his reflection distorted in the midnight blue paint. "I heard rumors you'd acquired one. Must have connections. There's a 3-year waiting list." "Connections help," Evelyn agreed. "But mostly it's about understanding value and being willing to invest in excellence." It was the perfect opening, the metaphor she'd planned, leading naturally into discussions about how Cross Industries' acquisition of Thornton Dynamics would be that same kind of investment, recognizing value, committing resources, building something excellent together. The meeting went exactly as she'd orchestrated. By the time they'd moved to the conference room upstairs, the Phantom had done its work, setting the tone, establishing the narrative, making the statement she'd needed to make. But as she sat across from Thornton and his team, presenting projections and integration strategies and 5-year growth models, part of Evelyn's mind kept returning to the garage. To Noah Reed in his gray uniform, kneeling beside a $4 million car with nothing but a multi-tool and expertise he no longer used. To the quiet certainty in his voice when he'd said, "I listened." To the choice he'd made, walking away from everything most people spent their lives chasing toward something most people claimed to value but rarely prioritized. She'd meant what she'd said. The offer stood, the door was open. But she'd also meant what she hadn't said, that she recognized in Noah something she wasn't sure she possessed herself. The ability to know what mattered and the courage to choose it, even when the cost was everything the world told you to want. The Thornton merger would close. Cross Industries would grow. The Phantom would continue to make statements about precision and excellence and the cultivation of perfection. But Evelyn suspected she'd remember this night not for the deal, but for the janitor who'd fixed what experts couldn't, taught his daughter to notice wrongness, and walked away from recognition because he had something more important waiting. In the world Evelyn inhabited, that kind of clarity was rarer than any supercar, and infinitely more valuable. The Thornton merger closed on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks after the garage incident. Evelyn signed the final documents in her corner office while rain traced patterns down floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread below her like a circuit board of light and shadow. Her assistant brought champagne. Her board members called with congratulations. The stock price jumped 6% in after-hours trading, and through it all, Evelyn kept thinking about a janitor who'd walked away from genius because his daughter mattered more. She'd had HR pull Noah Reed's file the next morning, as promised. What she'd found had been both more and less than she'd expected. The basics confirmed his story. MIT graduate, top of his class, brief but brilliant career in performance engineering. But the details painted a richer picture. Patents filed before he was 25. Recommendations from people whose names carried weight in aerospace circles. A trajectory that should have led to corner offices and TED Talks, and the kind of recognition that changed industries. Instead, his employment history for the past 5 years read like a deliberate retreat. Maintenance technician at an apartment complex. Night shift warehouse work. Finally, janitorial services at Cross Industries, where he'd been consistently punctual, reliably competent, and completely unremarkable for 3 years, until he'd fixed a $4 million car in 90 seconds. Evelyn had filed the information away, respecting Noah's clear boundaries about not wanting advancement, but she'd also flagged his employee record in a way that would alert her if his situation changed, if he ever indicated openness to other opportunities. She hadn't expected that alert to trigger quite so soon. The call came on Monday morning just after 9. Evelyn was reviewing integration timelines for Thornton's facilities when her assistant Marcus, different Marcus than the engineer, though the name coincidence had caused confusion more than once, appeared in her doorway looking uncertain. "Ms. Cross? I have Richard Palmer from Facilities Management on line 3. He says it's urgent and specifically requested to speak with you personally." Evelyn's first thought was that something had broken. HVAC, failure, security breach, one of the 1,000 infrastructure issues that could theoretically reach executive attention but rarely did. "Did he say what it's regarding?" "He mentioned Noah Reed's name." Evelyn picked up immediately. "Richard, what's happened?" Richard Palmer's voice carried the careful professionalism of someone delivering bad news to superiors. "Ms. Cross, I'm calling because we have a situation with one of our janitorial staff, and given your previous interaction, I thought you should be informed before we proceed with standard protocols." "What kind of situation?" "Noah Reed didn't show up for his shift last night. Didn't call, didn't notify his supervisor. We tried reaching him this morning. His phone goes straight to voicemail, and there's no answer at his residence. We have strict attendance policies, and normally this would result in immediate termination, but given that he's been completely reliable for 3 years, and given your conversation with him, I wanted to check if there were any special circumstances before we process his separation." Evelyn felt something cold settle in her chest. Noah hadn't struck her as someone who'd simply abandoned responsibilities, especially not work that supported his daughter. "Have you contacted emergency services? Filed a wellness check?" "That would be our next step if we move forward with concern protocols rather than termination protocols. I wanted your guidance on which direction to take." "File the wellness check immediately," Evelyn said, "and hold off on any termination paperwork. Keep me updated directly. I want to know what they find." She ended the call and sat staring at her desk, at the merger document still requiring her signature, at the carefully organized empire of her daily schedule. Something was wrong. She knew it the way Noah had known the Phantom's engine was catching, the way his daughter had heard wrongness and sounds no one else noticed. People didn't just disappear. Not people like Noah Reed, whose whole life was built around being present, being reliable, being the father his daughter needed. The wellness check came back 2 hours later. Noah's apartment was locked, no signs of disturbance. Neighbors hadn't seen anything unusual. His car was in its assigned spot. No hospital admissions under his name, no police reports. It was as if he'd simply vanished between Friday evening and Sunday night. Evelyn made a decision that would have surprised the people who thought they knew her. She cleared her afternoon schedule, something she almost never did, and drove to the address in Noah's file herself. The apartment complex was in a neighborhood that had seen better days but maintained dignity through effort. Flower boxes on balconies, fresh paint over old brick, the signs of people caring for what they had. Noah's unit was on the second floor, and Evelyn climbed stairs that smelled of cooking and heard the sounds of lives being lived behind closed doors. She knocked. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. "He's not there." Evelyn turned. An elderly woman stood in the doorway across the hall, arms crossed, eyes sharp with the watchful intelligence of someone who noticed everything. "I'm looking for Noah Reed," Evelyn said. "Do you know where he might be?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Evelyn Cross. I employ Mr. Reed." The woman's expression shifted slightly, assessing. "You're the boss he told Lily about, the one with the fancy car." "He mentioned me." "Lily mentioned you. That child talks about everything her daddy does like it's the most important thing in the world. Usually is, far as I can tell." The woman stepped into the hallway, closing her door behind her. "I'm Margaret Chen. I watch Lily sometimes when Noah's schedule gets complicated." "Do you know where they are now?" Margaret's face clouded. "Hospital, Swedish Medical Center. Lily got sick Friday night. Fever that wouldn't break, breathing problems. Noah took her to emergency. I haven't heard from him since Saturday morning, and that's not like him. He always checks in, Always make sure people know what's happening with that girl. Evelyn was already moving toward the stairs. Which hospital? Swedish Medical, like I said. But I don't know if they'll let you see them. Family only in intensive care. And Noah's particular about who's around Lily when she's vulnerable. Evelyn paused on the landing. Intensive care? That's what he said Saturday. Something about her lungs, complications. He sounded scared, Miss Cross, really scared. And Noah Reed doesn't scare easy. 20 minutes later, Evelyn walked through the automatic doors of Swedish Medical Center's main entrance, past the gift shop and the coffee stand and the weary-looking people who populated hospital waiting rooms like statues of exhaustion. The pediatric intensive care unit was on the 4th floor, behind security doors that required permission to pass. She gave her name to the nurse at the desk, explained that she was Noah Reed's employer checking on an employee welfare matter. The nurse made a call, had a quiet conversation, then looked up with sympathy in her eyes. Mr. Reed says he'll come out to speak with you. Please wait in the family lounge, down the hall, 2nd door on your left. The family lounge was a room designed to feel comforting and somehow made everything worse by trying. Soft furniture in soothing colors, magazines no one read, a television playing with the sound off. Evelyn sat on a chair that was probably expensive and definitely uncomfortable, and waited. Noah appeared 15 minutes later, and Evelyn barely recognized him. He wore the same clothes he'd probably been wearing for days. His face was shadowed with exhaustion and worry. His eyes held a kind of desperate focus that came from running on reserves that were nearly empty. "Miss Cross," he said, and his voice was hoarse. "I'm sorry. I meant to call, meant to let someone know about work, but everything happened so fast and I couldn't—" "Don't apologize," Evelyn interrupted. "How is Lily?" Noah sank into the chair across from her, and for a moment his carefully maintained composure cracked. "Pneumonia, but it's not responding to normal treatment. They're calling it atypical, complicated. Her oxygen levels keep dropping, and they've had to put her on a ventilator. The doctors are trying different antibiotics, different approaches, but nothing's working the way it should." "What do they say about prognosis?" "They're cautiously optimistic, which is doctor speak for we don't really know." Noah rubbed his face with both hands. "She's 7 years old, Ms. Cross. She's the healthiest kid I know, never gets sick, has perfect attendance at school, eats vegetables without complaining, and now she's in there with machines breathing for her, and I can't fix it. I can't hear what's wrong and make it right." Evelyn heard the echo of the garage in his words, the man who'd diagnosed mechanical problems through sound, now facing something that refused to be solved through listening, through expertise, through any skill he possessed. "What can I do?" she asked. Noah looked at her with surprise. "You don't need to do anything. I know I missed work, know there are policies. I'll submit my resignation as soon as I can think straight enough to write it. I just need to focus on Lily right now." "You're not resigning," Evelyn said firmly. "Your job is safe, your position is secure, and you're not losing income over a family medical emergency. That's not how I run my company." "Ms. Cross, what I'm asking," Evelyn continued, "is what you need. Better doctors, specialist consultations, transfers to other facilities? I have resources, Noah. Let me use them." For a long moment, Noah just stared at her. Then his eyes filled, and he looked away, blinking hard. "The doctors here are good. Really good. They're doing everything they can. It's just—" His voice broke. "It's just taking so long, and she's so small in that bed. And I keep thinking about when Sarah died, how fast it was, how I didn't get to say anything or do anything or fix anything, and now Lily's in there and I still can't fix it." Evelyn recognized the edge in his voice, the place where fear becomes spiral, where worry becomes paralysis. She'd seen it in executives during crises, watched competent people lose their ability to function when the stakes became personal. "When did you last eat?" she asked. Noah blinked at the question. "What?" "Food. When did you last have an actual meal?" "I don't know. Saturday morning, maybe. The cafeteria has coffee, and I've been drinking that." "Coffee isn't food. Come with me." "I can't leave. The cafeteria is in this building. You can be back in 15 minutes if anything changes. They have your number. They'll call. But you can't help Lily if you collapse from exhaustion and malnutrition." It was the same voice she used with executives who were running themselves into the ground, the tone that made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. Noah resisted for another moment, then the fight went out of him and he nodded. The cafeteria was depressingly standard, institutional food served under fluorescent lights to people too worried to taste anything. Evelyn loaded a tray with items that looked reasonably nutritious and made Noah sit at a table by the windows while she paid. He ate mechanically, barely aware of what he was consuming, his phone face up on the table in case the hospital called. Evelyn sat across from him, drinking coffee she didn't need, watching this man who'd walked away from everything to be present for his daughter, now being tested in ways expertise couldn't solve. "You said Lily was talking about me," Evelyn said, more to break the silence than anything else. Noah managed a small smile. "She was impressed. Said you looked like a queen in a business castle, and that the car was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. She drew a picture of it for her room, wanted to remember what something that perfect looked like. She has a good eye. She has a good everything." Noah's voice was soft, full of the kind of love that hurt to witness. "She's smart, Ms. Cross, really smart. Not just book smart, though she's that too. She thinks about how things work, why people make the choices they do, what makes systems function or fail. She asks questions I can't answer, sees patterns I miss. Sometimes I wonder what she'll become if—" He stopped. When she grows up." Evelyn heard the slip, the if that revealed where his mind was going. "She'll grow up," Evelyn said firmly. "Children are resilient, especially smart ones who fight. I keep telling myself that. But then I remember that Sarah was young and healthy and alive, and then she wasn't. And I know that wanting something doesn't make it true. That being a good father doesn't protect your child from biology or bad luck or random catastrophe." "No," Evelyn agreed. "It doesn't. But it means she's not alone in there. It means she has someone fighting for her, someone who's present, someone who chose her over everything else. That matters, Noah. It might not feel like enough, but it matters." Noah's phone buzzed. He grabbed it immediately, his whole body tensing, but after reading the message, his shoulders dropped slightly. "Her oxygen levels are stable. No change, but stable. That's something. It's not enough." They sat in silence for a while, the cafeteria moving around them with its rhythms of shift changes and visiting hours and the strange suspended time that exists in hospitals. Finally, Noah pushed his empty tray aside and looked at Evelyn directly. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Not that I'm not grateful. I am. But you're the CEO of a major corporation. You have 1,000 things more important than checking on a janitor's sick kid." Evelyn considered the question, considered all the professional answers she could give about employee welfare and corporate responsibility and maintaining company culture. But Noah's honesty in the garage had earned honesty in return. "3 weeks ago," she said, "you showed me something I'd forgotten, that sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from people who aren't caught up in systems and hierarchies and the assumption that expertise equals understanding. You listened when everyone else was looking at data. You fixed what specialists couldn't because you paid attention to what mattered instead of what you were expected to measure." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I've spent 15 years building Cross Industries into what it is now. I've acquired companies, developed technologies, created value for shareholders and stakeholders, and everyone the business touches. But I did it by being relentless, by prioritizing growth over everything else, by making choices that advance the company even when they cost me personally. That's what successful people do," Noah said. "Maybe. But watching you walk away from me that night, going home to your daughter, choosing presence over advancement, it made me wonder what I'd traded for success. Whether I'd become so focused on measuring performance that I'd stopped listening to what actually mattered." Noah was quiet for a moment. "You're here because I made you question your choices. I'm here because you reminded me that people matter more than positions. And because when I heard you were in crisis, the thought of not responding felt wrong in a way I couldn't ignore." Evelyn met his eyes. "Also because Lily sounds remarkable, and the world needs remarkable children to grow up and ask questions that make the rest of us uncomfortable." A small, genuine smile crossed Noah's face. "She is remarkable, even when she's driving me crazy with questions I can't answer. Those are usually the most important questions." Noah's phone buzzed again. This time when he read the message, his whole body went rigid. "They want me back upstairs. They're trying a new treatment approach and want to discuss it. They took the elevator in silence, Noah's anxiety a tangible presence between them. At the PICU doors, he turned to Evelyn. "Thank you," he said, "for coming, for the meal, for not firing me for abandoning my shift. I'll make it up to the company somehow." "You already did," Evelyn said. 3 weeks ago in a garage. Now go take care of your daughter." She watched him disappear through the security doors, then stood in the hallway for a long moment, feeling the weight of hospitals and fear and all the things money and power couldn't fix. Her phone had 17 unread messages. Her afternoon meetings were starting in 40 minutes. The Thornton integration required her attention, and her board expected updates on Q4 projections. But for the first time in 15 years, Evelyn Cross found herself not caring about any of it. She pulled out her phone and called her assistant. "Marcus, I need you to clear my schedule for the rest of the day. Reschedule everything that can be moved, delegate everything that can't. I'll be unreachable for the next few hours." "Is everything all right, Ms. Cross?" "Define all right," Evelyn said. "I'm exactly where I need to be. That'll have to be enough." She found the hospital's business office on the second floor, a space that smelled of stress and bureaucracy and the particular despair of medical billing. The administrator who met with her was a tired-looking woman named Patricia, who'd clearly dealt with too many desperate families and not enough solutions. "I'm here regarding Noah Reed's daughter, Lily Reed," Evelyn said. "I need to understand their insurance situation and what financial obligations they're facing." Patricia pulled up records on her computer, her expression professionally neutral. "Mr. Reed has our standard employee health insurance through Cross Industries. The coverage is adequate for normal circumstances, but pediatric intensive care costs exceed the policy limits fairly quickly. He's already accumulated approximately $40,000 in charges, and if treatment continues at this level, he'll be looking at substantial out-of-pocket expenses." "What would full coverage cost?" Patricia blinked. "I'm sorry?" "To cover all of Lily Reed's medical expenses, current and future, regardless of policy limits or treatment duration. What would that cost?" "That's not really how insurance works, Ms. Cross. There are deductibles, copays, coverage caps. I understand how insurance works. What I'm asking is how much it would cost to ensure that Noah Reed receives no medical bills, no payment demands, no financial stress related to his daughter's treatment. I want a number." Patricia stared at her for a moment, then began typing. "If we're talking about guaranteeing full coverage for the current admission plus any ongoing treatment, conservatively, you'd be looking at $200,000, possibly more if complications arise or if long-term care becomes necessary. Bill Cross Industries directly for all charges related to Lily Reed's care. Set up whatever accounting mechanism you need, but I want Noah Reed's financial obligation to be zero. Can you do that?" "Ms. Cross, that's extraordinarily generous, but your policies require someone to pay the bills. I'm offering to pay them. Unless there's a regulation preventing a company from covering an employee's medical expenses, I don't see the problem." Patricia's professional neutrality cracked into something like awe. "No, there's no regulation. This is highly unusual." "So I've been told. Can you implement it?" "Yes. It'll take some paperwork, but yes." "Then do it. Today." "And Patricia?" Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "If any bills slip through and reach Mr. Reed by mistake, I'll be very disappointed. Are we clear?" "Completely clear, Ms. Cross." Evelyn left the business office feeling lighter than she had in months, possibly years. It was a strange sensation. Spending money usually meant acquiring something, building something, investing in growth or advantage or strategic position. This was different. This was simply removing an obstacle, easing a burden, making space for someone to focus on what mattered without the additional weight of financial catastrophe. It felt good in a way that closing deals never quite did. She found a quiet corner in the main lobby and dealt with her 17 messages, her abandoned meetings, the small fires that always seemed to spark when she wasn't directly managing them. Most of it was routine, easily delegated or postponed. 2 items required actual decisions, which she made quickly and efficiently. The Thornton integration could wait. Q4 projections could wait. The empire she'd built wouldn't collapse because she took an afternoon to be present for an employee in crisis. She was about to leave, to return to the office and the demand she'd postponed, when she saw a small figure in a purple coat standing near the hospital gift shop. The girl was maybe 9 or 10, and she was staring at the display of stuffed animals and flowers with the intense focus of someone making a critical decision with limited resources. Evelyn recognized that focus. She'd seen it in boardrooms, in negotiations, in the eyes of people trying to make something important happen without quite enough ammunition. The girl pulled a small change purse from her coat pocket and carefully counted coins into her palm. Her face fell slightly as she realized the total. Then she looked back at the stuffed animals with the kind of longing that hurt to witness. Evelyn walked over. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Are you looking for something specific?" The girl looked up, startled. "I'm trying to find something for my friend. She's sick upstairs and I wanted to bring her something to make her feel better, but I only have $4.63 and everything good costs more than that." "What's your friend's name?" "I can't tell strangers people's names," the girl said seriously. "My mom says that's a privacy thing." "Your mom is absolutely right. That's very smart. What is your friend like? Maybe I can help you find something in your budget." The girl considered this, weighing stranger danger against the appeal of help. She really likes purple, and she loves anything soft that she can hug. She's only 7, but she's really brave. She's in the hospital because her lungs aren't working right, and I heard my mom say it's really serious. Something cold touched Evelyn's spine. "This friend of yours, is she in pediatric intensive care?" "Yeah, how did you know?" "Just a guess." "What's your name?" "Emma. Emma Rodriguez." "Hi, Emma. I'm Evelyn, and I think I might know your friend." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? Do you know—" She stopped, remembering the privacy rule. "Do you know the girl in room 412? I know her father, and I agree that she's very brave. I also think she'd love anything you picked out for her, regardless of cost. The fact that you're thinking about her when she's scared and sick, that's the gift that matters." Emma looked down at her coins. "But I want to give her something real, something she can hold on to." Evelyn made a decision. "What if we work together? You pick out exactly what you think she'd love, and I'll help with the budget part. Then we can both give her something to hold on to." Emma's face brightened, then clouded with suspicion. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "No, I don't. But I know your friend needs people in her corner right now, and I think you're exactly the kind of person who knows how to pick the perfect gift. So what do you say? Partners?" Emma thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Partners? But I choose the gift." "Absolutely. You're the expert on what she needs." They spent 15 minutes in the gift shop, Emma carefully evaluating options with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. She rejected flowers as too temporary, dismissed chocolate as probably not allowed in ICU, and finally settled on a purple stuffed elephant with impossibly soft fur and eyes that looked kind. "This one," Emma said firmly, "because elephants never forget, and I want her to remember that people are thinking about her even when she's alone in that room." Evelyn felt something catch in her chest. "That's perfect reasoning. Let's get it." At the register, Emma carefully counted out her $4.63, while Evelyn quietly covered the remaining $26. The cashier, reading the situation with the emotional intelligence that comes from working in hospital gift shops, wrapped the elephant in purple tissue paper and added a card. "For your messages," she said to Emma, handing her a pen. Emma wrote carefully, her tongue stuck out in concentration. When she finished, she showed Evelyn the card. "For my brave friend, remember that lots of people love you. Love, Emma." "That's beautiful," Evelyn said honestly. "Do you want to add something?" Emma asked. "Since you're my partner?" Evelyn took the pen and added one line. "P.S. Your dad is a hero. Keep fighting. E." They took the elevator to the 4th floor together, and at the PICU doors, Emma turned to Evelyn with sudden shyness. "Thank you for helping me. I know it was mostly your money, but it felt like we did it together." "We did do it together. You picked the perfect gift, Emma. That was the important part." Emma hugged the wrapped elephant close. "I hope she gets better. She's one of my best friends. Even though we just met at school this year, some people you just know are going to be important, you know?" "I do know," Evelyn said softly, "and I think she's lucky to have a friend like you." She watched Emma talk her way past the security desk. Apparently the girl had been visiting regularly enough to be recognized, and disappear into the unit with her purple elephant in her enormous heart. Evelyn stood in the hallway for a long moment, thinking about children who understood important things adults forgot, about the gifts that mattered and the ones that didn't, about all the ways people connected and supported each other that had nothing to do with money or power or carefully managed corporate responsibility programs. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her assistant, another small fire requiring attention. But for once, Evelyn felt no urgency to respond. The fires would keep. They always did. She was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what mattered. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, that felt like enough. Evelyn returned to Cross Industries just after 5, walking through a lobby that felt different somehow, as if the building itself had shifted while she was gone. Her employees nodded as she passed, the same respectful greetings she received every day, but now she found herself wondering about their lives beyond these walls. Who was waiting for them at home? What crises were they managing in silence? What gifts were they choosing with carefully counted coins? Her office felt too large when she entered it, the view too expansive, the silence too complete. She sat at her desk and tried to focus on the integration reports waiting for her review, but the words blurred together. Instead, she kept seeing Noah's exhausted face, Emma's careful counting, Lily's purple elephant wrapped in tissue paper. The intercom buzzed. "Miss Cross? Dr. Sarah Chen from Swedish Medical Center is on line 2. She says it's regarding Noah Reed." Evelyn's hand was on the phone before her assistant finished speaking. "This is Evelyn Cross." "Ms. Cross, I'm Dr. Chen, Lily Reed's attending physician. Noah gave me permission to contact you regarding his daughter's care. I understand you've been involved in supporting the family." "I have." "How is Lily?" "That's why I'm calling. We've seen some improvement in the last few hours. Her oxygen saturation is stabilizing at higher levels, and she's responding better to the antibiotic combination we started this afternoon. It's cautiously encouraging." Evelyn felt tension she hadn't realized she was carrying release slightly. "That's good news." "It is, but I'm calling because Noah is approaching a breaking point. He hasn't left the hospital in 4 days. He's sleeping maybe 2 hours a night in a chair next to Lily's bed, and he's running on reserves that are nearly empty. I've seen this pattern before. Parents push themselves until they collapse, and then we have 2 patients instead of 1. What do you need me to do?" "Honestly, I need him to go home, take a real shower, sleep in an actual bed, eat a proper meal. But he won't leave unless he trusts that Lily is being watched by someone who'll call him immediately if anything changes. He mentioned that you came by earlier, that you've been supportive. Would you be willing to sit with Lily for a few hours while Noah goes home to rest?" Evelyn looked at her desk, at the reports waiting, at the calendar showing back-to-back meetings scheduled for tomorrow morning. Then she thought about a 7-year-old girl fighting for breath, about a father choosing presence over everything else, about what actually mattered when you stripped away all the professional obligations that felt important until they didn't. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, she said. Dr. Chen's relief was audible. "Thank you. I'll let Noah know you're coming. Fair warning, he'll probably resist. He's very protective of who has access to Lily, especially when she's vulnerable." "I understand. I'll convince him." The drive to Swedish Medical Center took 23 minutes through evening traffic. Evelyn used the time to call her assistant and clear her morning schedule, pushing meetings and postponing calls and generally doing the things she almost never did, making space in her carefully controlled calendar for something unplanned, something that couldn't be delegated or optimized or managed through efficient systems. The PITU at night had a different quality than during the day. The lights were dimmed, the activity subdued, the atmosphere heavy with the specific quiet that comes when children are fighting battles they shouldn't have to face. The nurse at the desk recognized Evelyn from earlier and nodded toward room 412. "Mr. Reed is expecting you." Dr. Chen spoke with him. Evelyn knocked softly on the door frame. Noah looked up from where he sat in a chair pulled close to Lily's bed, his hand wrapped around his daughter's smaller one. Even in the room's dim light, Evelyn could see the toll the last 4 days had taken, the shadows under his eyes, the exhaustion carved into every line of his face, the desperate focus of someone holding on through sheer force of will. Lily lay still under white blankets, machines breathing for her, monitors tracking rhythms that should have been automatic. She looked impossibly small, impossibly fragile. Her dark hair spread across the pillow and her face peaceful in medicated sleep. The purple elephant Emma had brought sat on the bed beside her, one small hand resting on its soft fur. "Hi," Noah said quietly. His voice was rough from disuse and worry. "Hi," Evelyn replied, keeping her own voice low. "Dr. Chen said there's been improvement?" "Yeah, her oxygen levels are better. Her fever's down 1/2 degree. Her lungs are starting to respond to treatment. It's not dramatic, but it's something." Noah looked back at his daughter. "It's the first real something we've had." "That's good. That's really good, Noah. Dr. Chen also said she called you, asked you to babysit me while I go home and sleep." There was no accusation in his voice, just tired acknowledgement. "She's worried about you, I'm worried about you, and I think Lily would want you to take care of yourself." "I can't leave her." Noah's grip tightened on Lily's hand. "What if something changes? What if she wakes up and I'm not here? What if you collapse from exhaustion and can't be here when she really needs you?" Evelyn moved into the room, pulling up a second chair. "I'm not suggesting you abandon her, Noah. I'm suggesting you trust me to watch her for a few hours while you do the basic things that'll let you be the father she needs when she wakes up." Noah was quiet for a long moment, his eyes never leaving Lily's face. "You don't have to do this. You've already done so much, the job security, the medical bills." "You know about the medical bills?" "Patricia from billing called me this afternoon, said Cross Industries was covering everything, that I wouldn't receive any charges. I tried to argue, tried to explain that I couldn't accept that kind of help, but she said the decision was already made and there was nothing to discuss." Noah finally looked at Evelyn. "That was you. That was me. Why?" Evelyn considered the question, the same one Noah had asked in the cafeteria with different words. "Because you shouldn't have to choose between your daughter's health and financial survival. Because the system that forces people into that choice is broken. And while I can't fix the system, I can fix this. Because it was within my power to help, and not helping felt like a choice I couldn't live with. I don't know how to repay that kind of generosity." "You don't repay it. You accept it. You focus on your daughter, and someday when someone else needs help, you do what you can for them. That's how it works." Noah's eyes filled, and he looked away, blinking hard. "I keep thinking about Sarah, about how I wasn't there when she needed me, how I was too busy chasing the next project to notice that something might be wrong. And now Lily's in here, and I can't fix it, can't hear what's wrong and make it right, and all I can do is sit here and hold her hand and hope that's enough." "It is enough," Evelyn said firmly. "Noah, you can't fix everything. Some things aren't fixable through expertise or listening or any skill you possess. But being here, being present, being the constant in her world, that's what she needs. That's what you're giving her. What if it's not enough? What if she—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Then you'll have been here. You'll have held her hand, loved her completely, been exactly the father you've spent 5 years becoming. There's no higher calling than that, no greater gift you can give." Evelyn paused. "But I don't think that's what's going to happen. Dr. Chen said she's responding to treatment. Her friend Emma brought her a purple elephant, and her father is here, refusing to leave, choosing her over everything else in the world. That's a lot of reasons to fight." Noah managed a small, exhausted smile. "You met Emma?" "I did. She's remarkable. Spent her allowance money on that elephant because she wanted Lily to have something soft to hold on to. Said some people you just know are going to be important." "That sounds like Emma. She and Lily became inseparable about 2 months into the school year. Different as night and day, Lily's quiet and thoughtful, Emma's loud and fearless, but they balance each other somehow." Noah looked at the purple elephant. "I can't believe she came all the way here by herself." "I don't think she came alone. I suspect a parent was nearby. But she did the gift shop part herself, including some very serious decision-making about what would mean the most. Lily will love it. She'll probably sleep with that elephant for the next 10 years. Noah's voice caught on the future tense, on the assumption of years that suddenly felt less certain than they should. "Then you need to be rested enough to see that," Evelyn said gently. "Go home, Noah. Shower. Eat something real. Sleep in your own bed for a few hours. I'll stay right here. I'll hold her hand if she stirs. I'll call you immediately if anything changes, and I'll be here when you get back." Noah looked at Lily, at the machines keeping her alive, at the monitors tracking every heartbeat and breath. Then he looked at Evelyn, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay. But you call me if anything changes. Anything at all. Doesn't matter how small. You promise?" "I promise." Noah stood slowly, his hand reluctant to release Lily's. He bent and kissed her forehead, whispering something too soft for Evelyn to hear. Then he straightened, pulled his phone from his pocket, and checked 3 times that the ringer was on, that the volume was up, that he hadn't somehow missed a notification. "I'll be back in 4 hours," he said. "Maybe 3. Take 4. Take 5 if you need it. We'll be fine." Noah nodded, then walked to the door. He paused there, looking back at his daughter one more time. "Thank you, Ms. Cross, for all of this. I don't have words for what it means." "You don't need words, just go rest." After he left, the room settled into a different kind of quiet. Evelyn moved to the chair Noah had vacated, still warm from his constant presence, and looked at the small girl in the bed. Up close, she could see the resemblance to Noah, the same dark hair, the same determined set to her jaw even in sleep, the same sense of someone who thought deeply about the world around them. The machines breathed for Lily with mechanical precision, a rhythm that was both reassuring and heartbreaking. This was what life reduced to sometimes: bodies fighting, technology assisting, love hoping. All the complexity of existence narrowed to the simple binary of breathing or not breathing, fighting or surrendering, holding on or letting go. Evelyn reached out carefully and took Lily's hand the way Noah had held it. The girl's fingers were small and warm, her pulse visible in the delicate skin of her wrist. So much life in such a fragile package, so much potential compressed into 7 years of questions and curiosity and careful observation. "Hi, Lily," Evelyn said softly. "You don't know me, but I know your dad. He talks about you like you're the most important thing in the world, which I suspect you are. He's gone home to rest for a few hours, which he desperately needs, so I'm here to keep you company while he does that." Lily didn't respond, lost somewhere in medicated sleep, but Evelyn continued anyway. "Emma brought you a very nice elephant. She took the selection process extremely seriously, which I respect. She said elephants never forget, and she wanted you to remember that people are thinking about you. I think that's very wise for someone her age. You have a good friend there." The monitors beeped their steady rhythms. The ventilator whispered. Beyond the door, the PICU continued its careful watch over children fighting battles they shouldn't have to face. "Your father fixed my car," Evelyn continued, finding comfort in speaking even if Lily couldn't hear. "Well, he fixed it and you noticed it was broken first, so really it was a team effort. He listened to something everyone else missed, and he fixed it in about 90 seconds. It was the most impressive thing I'd seen in months, maybe years. Made me rethink a lot of assumptions about expertise and value and what actually matters." She paused, adjusting her grip on Lily's hand. "He told me about your mom, about how he walked away from everything to be the father you needed. I've been thinking about that a lot, about the choices we make, about what we prioritize, about whether success means building empires or building relationships. I don't have the answer yet. But watching your dad, seeing how he shows up for you, how he chooses you every single time, that feels like success in a way my quarterly reports never quite do." A nurse came in to check vitals, smiled at Evelyn, made notes on a tablet, and left again. The routine of care, the practiced efficiency of people who dealt with crisis as their daily normal. "Emma said some people you just know are going to be important," Evelyn continued. "I think she's right. I think you're one of those people, Lily. Your dad certainly thinks so. He's terrified right now, absolutely terrified of losing you, but he's also so proud of who you are. He talks about your questions, your observations, the way you think about systems and patterns. That's special. That's the kind of mind the world needs." Evelyn felt foolish talking to an unconscious child, but it also felt necessary. As if bearing witness mattered, as if speaking truth into the quiet could somehow anchor Lily to the world, remind her that people were waiting for her to wake up. "So here's what I need you to do," Evelyn said, her voice firmer now. "I need you to keep fighting. I need you to let these medicines do their work. Let your body heal. Let your lungs remember how to breathe on their own. Your dad needs you. Emma needs you. And frankly, I'm curious to meet the girl who notices wrong sounds in expensive cars. That's not a skill you want to waste. The hours passed in that strange, suspended way time moves in hospitals. Evelyn answered emails one-handed, her other hand still holding Lily's, responding to messages from her assistant about postponed meetings and rescheduled calls. The board wanted an update on the Thornton integration. Her CFO needed approval on budget allocations. Normal business continued, the empire she'd built still requiring attention, even when she was sitting in a hospital room holding a 7-year-old's hand. Around midnight, Lily stirred slightly. Not waking, just shifting in sleep, a small sound escaping from around the ventilator tube. Evelyn tensed, ready to call for nurses, but the monitors remained steady and Lily settled again. "It's okay," Evelyn whispered. "You're safe. Your dad will be back soon. Just rest." At 1 a.m, a different nurse came in, an older woman with kind eyes and the calm competence of someone who'd seen everything. "You must be Ms. Cross," the nurse said. "I'm Rebecca. Dr. Chen told me you'd be here. How's our girl doing?" "Sleeping peacefully. No changes that I've noticed." Rebecca checked the monitors, adjusted something on the IV line, and nodded with satisfaction. "Her numbers are actually improving. Not dramatically, but consistently. That's what we like to see. Steady progress rather than dramatic swings." "Is she going to be okay?" Rebecca met Evelyn's eyes with the honesty of someone who'd learned not to make promises medicine couldn't keep. "I think so. She's young, she's strong, and she's fighting. The antibiotics are working now, but it'll be a few more days before we're really out of the woods. Noah will want to know that, about the improvement. He calls every 45 minutes like clockwork, even though we keep telling him we'll call if anything changes. That man loves his daughter something fierce." "He does," Rebecca smiled. "You're good people for doing this. Not many CEOs would sit bedside with an employee's sick kid. How did you know I was a CEO?" "Honey, I've been nursing for 32 years. I can spot executives from a mile away. It's the way you hold yourself, like you're used to being in charge. But you're here anyway, holding a little girl's hand at 1 a.m, which means you're the rare kind of executive who remembers that people matter more than profit." After Rebecca left, Evelyn sat in the quiet and thought about that assessment. Was she someone who remembered people mattered, or was she someone who'd forgotten and was only now relearning? The distinction felt important somehow. Noah called at 1:43, exactly 45 minutes after his last call. "Any changes?" he asked immediately. "She's stable. Actually, the night nurse said her numbers are improving consistently. Small progress, but steady." "That's good. That's really good." Noah's voice still carried exhaustion, but there was relief in it too. "Did she wake up at all?" "She stirred once, just shifted position, but she settled right back down. The purple elephant is still right beside her." "Okay, good. I'm going to try to sleep for another hour, then I'll head back." "Noah, you've barely been gone 3 hours. Take the time. We're fine here." "I know, I need to be there. I need to see her." "I understand, but she's safe. Dr. Chen was right about the improvement. And you can't help her if you're running on empty." There was a long pause. "You're right. Okay, I'll try for another hour, but if anything changes, I'll call immediately. I promise." After he hung up, Evelyn resumed her vigil. She found herself studying Lily's face, trying to see what Noah saw. The future engineer, the curious mind, the daughter who made losing everything else worthwhile. What questions would this child ask when she woke up? What patterns would she notice? What systems would she eventually change? Around 2:30, Evelyn's own eyes began to close. She fought it at first, unwilling to sleep when she'd promised to watch, but exhaustion has its own gravity. She compromised by resting her head on the edge of Lily's bed, her hand still wrapped around the girl's, her body positioned so any movement would wake her immediately. She drifted in that shallow place between sleep and awareness, conscious of the machine's rhythms, the nurse's quiet movements in the hall, the weight of responsibility she'd taken on. In that half-dreaming state, she thought about empires built and relationships neglected, about success measured in quarterly reports and success measured in children who felt safe enough to sleep, about all the ways humans tried to matter in a world that kept insisting on the wrong metrics. A small movement pulled her back to full awareness. Lily's hand had twitched in hers, fingers pressing slightly as if testing their grip. Evelyn sat up immediately, alert, watching. Lily's eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding them as she tried to understand where she was. Why breathing felt strange, why a woman she didn't recognize was holding her hand. The monitors registered her elevated heart rate, and Evelyn saw panic beginning to form. "Hey, it's okay," Evelyn said quickly, keeping her voice calm and gentle. "You're in the hospital. You're safe. Your dad will be here very soon. My name is Evelyn, and I'm a friend of your father's. You've been sick, but you're getting better. Can you squeeze my hand if you understand?" Lily's eyes were wide above the ventilator, frightened and disoriented, but after a moment her fingers tightened around Evelyn's. Not panic then, just fear, which was understandable and manageable. "Good. That's really good, Lily. You're doing great. I'm going to call for a nurse now, just to let them know you're awake, okay? But I'm not letting go of your hand. I promised your dad I'd stay with you, and I keep my promises." She pressed the call button with her free hand. Rebecca appeared almost immediately, her expression shifting from routine to focused attention when she saw Lily's open eyes. "Well, hello there, sweetheart," Rebecca said warmly, moving to check monitors. "Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare, but you're doing much better now. Your oxygen levels are good, your heart rate is perfect. You just rest and let that machine help you breathe for a little while longer, and we'll have you off it soon." Rebecca caught Evelyn's eye and mouthed, "Call her father." Evelyn nodded and pulled out her phone with her free hand, keeping her other hand locked with Lily's. Noah answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. She's awake, Noah. Lily's awake, and she's alert, and her vitals are good." The sound Noah made was something between a sob and a laugh. "I'm on my way. 10 minutes. Tell her I'm coming. Tell her—" His voice broke. "I'll tell her. Drive safely." She ended the call and looked at Lily, who was watching her with eyes that were far too aware, far too intelligent for someone who should be lost in medicated fog. "Your dad is on his way," Evelyn said. "He'll be here in about 10 minutes. He's been here the whole time, Lily. He hasn't left your side except to go home and rest for a few hours, and only because I promised to stay with you. He loves you so much." Lily's eyes filled with tears that spilled down her temples into her hair. Her hand gripped Evelyn's harder, and Evelyn felt her heart break a little at the fear and confusion and desperate need for her father that the child couldn't voice around the ventilator. "I know it's scary," Evelyn said softly. "I know you don't understand what's happening or why you can't talk or why breathing feels wrong, but you're safe, you're healing, and your dad is coming. Just hold on for a few more minutes, okay? Can you do that for me?" Lily nodded slightly, her eyes never leaving Evelyn's face. In that gaze, Evelyn saw the child Noah had described, the observer, the thinker, the girl who noticed patterns and asked questions and understood things beyond her years. Even scared and sick and connected to machines, Lily was assessing, evaluating, trying to make sense of her situation. "You know what?" Evelyn continued, needing to fill the silence, needing to anchor this child to the world through words and presence. "Your friend Emma came to visit. She brought you that purple elephant right there. She said elephants never forget, and she wanted you to remember that people are thinking about you. I helped her pick it out, and let me tell you, she took the selection process extremely seriously, rejected at least 5 other options before deciding that one was perfect." Lily's eyes shifted to the elephant, and something in her expression softened slightly. "She's a good friend. Your dad says you two balance each other. You're thoughtful, and she's fearless. That sounds like a good partnership to me." Rebecca finished her checks and smiled at Lily. "All your numbers look great, sweetie. Dr. Chen is going to be so happy when she makes rounds in a few hours. You just keep resting and healing, okay?" The minutes until Noah arrived felt both endless and too fast. Evelyn stayed exactly where she was, hand locked with Lily's, speaking quietly about anything and nothing, about Emma's dedication, about the purple elephant's soft fur, about how proud her father was of her questions and observations. When Noah finally appeared in the doorway, Lily's eyes went bright with recognition and relief and love, so pure it hurt to witness. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took his daughter's other hand, his eyes flooding as he looked at her awake, aware, fighting. "Hey, baby girl," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You scared me. But you're doing so good, fighting so hard. I'm so proud of you." Lily's tears came harder now, and she tried to speak around the ventilator, frustrated sounds that conveyed what words couldn't. I know you can't talk right now, but that tube is helping you breathe while your lungs heal. It won't be forever, I promise. Just a little while longer." Noah looked at Evelyn. "Thank you. Thank you for being here, for calling me, for keeping her safe." "She did most of the work," Evelyn said. "She's very brave." "She is." Noah turned back to Lily. "Do you remember Ms. Cross? She's the one with the beautiful car that you noticed wasn't sounding right. She's been helping us a lot." Lily's eyes shifted to Evelyn again, and this time there was recognition in them, not of having met before, but of having heard about, of fitting pieces together even through fear and confusion. Evelyn stood slowly, releasing Lily's hand now that her father was here. "I should go, give you two some privacy." "You don't have to leave," Noah said. "I think I do. This is your time together, but I'll come back tomorrow if that's all right. I want to see how this remarkable girl is doing." "We'd like that," Noah said. "Wouldn't we, Lily?" Lily nodded slightly, her eyes already back on her father's face, drinking in his presence the way deserts drink rain. Evelyn walked to the door, then paused and looked back. "Keep fighting, Lily. The world has questions waiting for you to ask them." She left the room and stood in the hallway for a moment, feeling the weight of the last few hours settle onto her shoulders. The hospital continued its night rhythms around her, but something had shifted. Not just in Lily's condition, but in Evelyn herself, in what she understood about value and presence and the choices that actually mattered. Her phone buzzed with another message from her CFO. Budget allocations, quarterly projections, the normal demands of the empire she'd built. But for once, they felt less urgent than they should. Less important than a 7-year-old girl opening her eyes, less critical than a father's relief, less essential than the simple act of showing up when someone needed you to stay. Evelyn Cross walked out of Swedish Medical Center into the cold pre-dawn darkness, and for the first time in 15 years she wasn't quite sure who she was or what she was building or whether the empire was worth what she'd paid for it. But she knew she'd be back tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day until Lily Reed walked out of this hospital on her own 2 feet, asking questions and noticing patterns, and reminding everyone around her that sometimes the most important things are the ones you almost miss while listening to the wrong sounds. The sun was already climbing when Evelyn reached her apartment, painting the city in shades of gold that felt almost aggressive after the hospital's careful dimness. She stood in her living room, all clean lines and expensive minimalism, and felt like a stranger in her own space. The silence here was different from the hospital's quiet. There, silence meant vigilance, machines monitoring, nurses watching, life being carefully tended. Here, silence just meant empty. She showered, changed into fresh clothes, and checked her phone. 43 messages. Her assistant had fielded what he could, but decisions were stacking up like planes in a holding pattern. The Thornton integration team needed direction on facility consolidation. Her CFO was pushing for answers on the Q1 budget. 3 board members wanted meetings about strategic planning. Evelyn made coffee she didn't want and opened her laptop. For 2 hours, she worked through the backlog with the focused efficiency that had built her empire, approving allocations and scheduling meetings and providing the guidance her company needed. But part of her attention stayed elsewhere, kept circling back to a hospital room and a small hand gripping hers and the weight of promises made. At 8:30, her phone rang. Noah's number. "How is she?" Evelyn asked immediately. "Better." Noah's voice carried exhaustion, but also something lighter, something that might have been hope. "They took the ventilator out an hour ago. She's breathing on her own, oxygen support, but her lungs are doing the work. She even managed a few words." "That's wonderful, Noah. What did she say?" There was a smile in his voice when he answered. She asked where the purple elephant came from and whether Emma was okay. Even half awake and struggling to breathe, she was worried about her friend. "She sounds exactly like the daughter you've described." "She is. She's everything good I've ever done." Noah paused. "Evelyn, can I call you Evelyn? Ms. Cross feels wrong after last night." "Please, Evelyn is fine." "Evelyn, I don't know how to thank you for staying with her, for being there when she woke up, for all of it. She told me you held her hand and talked to her about Emma and the elephant. She said you promised I was coming, and she believed you. That matters more than I can explain. I'm glad I could be there. When can I visit? I want to see her fully awake. Anytime. She's actually asking to see you again. I think she's curious about the woman her dad keeps talking about. You talk about me? You saved my job, covered her medical bills, and stayed with her all night. Yeah, I talk about you. Lily's decided you're important, which means you're going to get interrogated with her particular brand of questions. Fair warning. Evelyn found herself smiling. I look forward to it. I'll come by this afternoon. We'll be here. After ending the call, Evelyn sat with her coffee and her laptop and the weight of choices that suddenly felt more consequential than quarterly reports. She could go into the office, tackle the meetings, be the CEO her company expected. Or she could acknowledge that something had shifted, that priorities were realigning in ways she couldn't quite name but couldn't ignore either. She called her assistant. Marcus, I need you to clear my calendar through Friday. Move everything that can be moved, delegate everything that can't. Tell the board I'll provide written updates on integration progress, but I'm unavailable for in-person meetings until next week. There was a pause. Ms. Cross, the Thornton team specifically requested, I know what they requested. Send them to David Chen in operations. He knows the facilities as well as I do. What else? The CFO really needs budget approval by end of day tomorrow. I'll review tonight and send approvals by morning. Anything else critical? Not critical, but people will ask questions. You've never taken this much time off. Then I'm overdue. Handle it, Marcus. You're excellent at managing expectations. She ended the call before he could protest further and felt something loosen in her chest. For 15 years, she'd been essential, irreplaceable, the center around which Cross Industries orbited. Discovering that the company could function for a few days without her constant presence was both unsettling and oddly liberating. At 2 o'clock, Evelyn walked back into Swedish Medical Center carrying something she'd stopped to buy on the way. A book about mechanical engineering explained for children, full of diagrams and projects and questions designed to make young minds curious about how things worked. If Lily was anything like Noah described, she'd appreciate the offering more than flowers or balloons. Room 412 looked different in daylight. The machines were still there, still monitoring, but their urgency had diminished. Lily was propped up on pillows, the oxygen mask covering the lower half of her face, her eyes bright with the alertness of someone who'd decided being awake was better than whatever place she'd been fighting back from. Noah sat beside her, looking less haggard than yesterday, though still carrying the shadows of sustained crisis. Hey, Evelyn said from the doorway. Is this a good time? Perfect time, Noah said. Lily's been asking when you'd visit. Evelyn approached the bed slowly, giving Lily time to assess her. Up close and conscious, the girl's resemblance to her father was even more striking, the same careful observation, the same intelligence evaluating and categorizing. Hi, Lily, Evelyn said. I'm Evelyn. We met last night, though you might not remember much of it. Lily lowered the oxygen mask slightly. I remember. Her voice was rough, barely above a whisper, but determined. You held my hand, told me about Emma and the elephant, said my dad was coming. That's right. How are you feeling? Like my lungs are full of cement, but better than before. Lily gestured weakly at the book Evelyn was holding. Is that for me? If you want it, I thought you might like it. It's about how mechanical systems work. Your dad mentioned you're curious about those things. Lily's eyes lit up with genuine excitement. Can I see? Evelyn handed her the book, and Lily immediately opened it, her fingers careful on the pages despite the IV line. She studied the diagrams with the focus of someone truly engaged, occasionally glancing at her father to share a particularly interesting illustration. This is perfect, Lily said finally. Thank you. You're welcome. Maybe when you're feeling better, you and your dad can work on some of the projects together. We will. Lily looked at Evelyn with those two intelligent eyes. Dad said you're really important, that you run a whole company. I do. Then why are you here? Shouldn't you be at work doing important things? Noah made a sound that might have been suppressed laughter. Lily, no, it's a fair question, Evelyn said. She pulled up a chair and sat so she could meet Lily's eyes directly. I'm supposed to be at work. I have meetings and decisions and all sorts of things that people tell me are important. But here's what I've learned recently. Sometimes the things we think are important aren't actually as important as the things we've stopped paying attention to. Like what? Like people. Like showing up when someone needs you. Like keeping promises even when it's inconvenient. Evelyn paused. Your dad taught me that. When he fixed my car. When he chose being your father over advancement. When he sat in this room for 4 days straight, refusing to leave you. He showed me what actually matters. Lily processed this seriously. So you're here because my dad taught you something? I'm here because you're remarkable, and I wanted to see how you were doing. Also because I made a promise to come back, and I keep my promises. That's good. Lots of people don't. Lily adjusted her oxygen mask and turned a page in the book. Dad says you paid for all this, the hospital stuff. I did. Why? It was the same question everyone kept asking, and Evelyn found herself giving the same answer that felt increasingly true. Because I could. Because your dad shouldn't have to choose between your health and keeping your home. Because the system that forces that choice is broken, and while I can't fix the system, I could fix this. Lily studied her for a long moment. Emma says rich people usually don't help unless it makes them look good. But you're not doing this for cameras or news or anything like that. No, I'm not. Then you're different than most rich people. That's good. We need more different rich people. Lily said it with the complete certainty of someone who'd thought through the logic and reached an unassailable conclusion. Noah was trying not to smile. Lily, maybe ease up on the social commentary while you're still in intensive care? I'm just saying what's true. You taught me to say what's true, even when it's uncomfortable. I did teach you that, and now I'm regretting it. Evelyn laughed, genuinely amused. She's wonderful, Noah, absolutely wonderful. She's something, that's for sure. Noah's expression was pure love. Though maybe we should redirect before she starts on economic inequality. I already know about economic inequality, Lily said. We studied it in school. I wrote a paper about how systems create cycles that are hard to break. Mrs. Patterson said it was college-level analysis. Of course she did, Noah said, shaking his head with fond exasperation. What am I going to do with you? Love me and answer my questions, Lily suggested. Always, on both counts. They spent the next hour in conversation that ranged from mechanical engineering to Lily's school projects to Emma's visiting schedule. Lily tired easily, her sentences growing shorter and her pauses longer, but she fought sleep with the determination of someone who'd spent too much time unconscious and wasn't ready to surrender awareness again. Dr. Chen stopped by during afternoon rounds, her satisfaction visible when she checked Lily's charts and vitals. This is excellent progress, she told Noah. If she continues improving at this rate, we'll move her out of intensive care tomorrow or the next day. Regular pediatric ward, much less restrictive. And after that, Noah asked? Assuming no setbacks, maybe another week for observation and respiratory therapy. We want to make sure her lungs are fully recovered before discharge. But honestly, she's doing better than I expected. Whatever combination of antibiotics we hit on, her body's responding beautifully. After Dr. Chen left, Lily looked at her father with eyes that were starting to droop. Does this mean I can go home soon? Soon, baby girl. Just a little more time to make sure you're completely better. Will I have to come back? Maybe for follow-up appointments, but the worst is over. You fought through the hard part. Lily was quiet for a moment, then said softly, I was scared, Dad, when I couldn't breathe right, when I woke up with that tube. I was really scared. Noah's hand tightened on hers. I know. I was scared too. But you were so brave, Lily, so incredibly brave. Evelyn helped. When I woke up and you weren't here, I was going to panic. But she promised you were coming, and she kept holding my hand, and I believed her. That helped. Evelyn felt something warm bloom in her chest. I'm glad I could help. And your dad was only gone for a few hours because he needed to rest so he could keep taking care of you. He was here the entire time before that. I know. He's always here when I need him. Lily's eyes were closing now, despite her efforts to keep them open. That's what dads are supposed to do. Be there. Yes, Evelyn said quietly. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. Lily surrendered to sleep a few minutes later, her breathing evening out into the steady rhythm of someone whose body was finally, properly, healing. Noah sat watching her with an expression that mixed relief and lingering fear and love so fierce it was almost painful to witness. She's going to be okay, Evelyn said softly. Yeah, I think she is. Noah looked at Evelyn. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for some complication or setback or new crisis. I can't quite believe we're actually on the other side of this. You are. She is. The worst is over. Because of you. If you hadn't covered the medical costs, I'd be figuring out payment plans and deciding what to sacrifice. If you hadn't stayed with her that night, I'd have collapsed from exhaustion. If you hadn't... His voice caught. I don't know how to carry this debt, Evelyn. How to repay what you've done. You don't repay it, Evelyn said, echoing what she'd told him before. You accept it, you focus on your daughter, and you pay it forward when you can. That's all. Noah was quiet for a while, watching Lily sleep. Then he said, I need to tell you something about why I really walked away from engineering. Evelyn waited, sensing this was important. It wasn't just Sarah's death, Noah continued, his voice low. I mean, that was the catalyst, the thing that forced the choice. But the truth is, I'd been feeling wrong about the work for a while before that. I was good at it, really good. Could diagnose problems nobody else could see, could hear wrongness in systems that seemed perfect. But I was using that skill to make expensive toys for rich people. Performance engines, luxury modifications, aerospace systems that only the wealthy would ever access. He paused, his hand gentle on Lily's blanket. When Sarah died, when I was sitting in that hospital room watching them try to save her and failing, I kept thinking about all the things I'd built and who they'd served. And I realized I'd spent years making things that didn't matter to people who didn't need them. When I looked at 2-year-old Lily and tried to figure out what kind of father I wanted to be, I knew I couldn't keep doing that. Not because engineering was bad, but because I'd been pointing my skills in the wrong direction. So you became a janitor, Evelyn said. So I became a janitor. Honest work that served everyone equally, that let me be present for Lily, that didn't require me to help the wealthy get wealthier while families like mine struggled for basic health care. Noah looked at her directly. I'm not saying what you do is wrong, Evelyn, but I needed to step away from a system I couldn't reconcile anymore. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense, Evelyn said quietly. And it makes me question things I've spent 15 years assuming were right. That wasn't my intention. Maybe it should be someone's intention. Maybe more people need to question what they're building and who it serves. Evelyn stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city spread below. I've created value, Noah. Lots of it. Jobs, products, innovations. But who has access to that value? Who benefits from what Cross Industries builds? I genuinely don't know the answer, and I think I should. Behind her, Noah was silent. Finally, he said, What are you thinking? Evelyn turned back to face him. I'm thinking that in 3 weeks, you've changed how I see everything. My work, my priorities, what success actually means. And I'm thinking that maybe Cross Industries could do more than create shareholder value. Maybe we could create something that actually matters to people like you and Lily. Evelyn, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, but I want to. What if we built systems that served everyone, not just people who can afford premium access? What if we used the resources and expertise we have to solve problems that actually impact ordinary families? She felt excitement building, the same feeling she got when a new strategy crystallized. You said you walked away because you were pointing your skills in the wrong direction. What if you helped me point Cross Industries in a better direction? Noah blinked. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity to use your skills in ways that align with your values. No expectation that you'll sacrifice time with Lily, no pressure to become something you don't want to be. But Noah, you see things other people miss. You understand how systems serve or fail ordinary people because you live in those systems. That perspective is exactly what Cross Industries needs. I don't know, Evelyn. I walked away from this world for good reasons. I know, and I'm not asking you to come back to the world you left. I'm asking you to help me build a different one. Evelyn moved back to her chair. Just think about it. No pressure, no timeline. But the offer stands. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Lily sleep, each processing the conversation in their own way. Finally, Evelyn stood to leave. I should go. Let you both rest. Will you come back? Noah asked. If you want me to. We do. Lily especially. She's already planning questions for your next visit. Something about whether your company works on sustainable systems and what your carbon footprint looks like. Evelyn laughed. I look forward to it. Tell her I'll prepare answers. She left the hospital as afternoon shifted toward evening, the city's rush hour building around her. But instead of heading to her office or her apartment, Evelyn found herself driving to Cross Industries' main manufacturing facility on the city's south side, a building she visited maybe twice a year for quarterly reviews. The facility manager, a competent woman named Lisa Park, looked startled when Evelyn walked through the front entrance unannounced. Ms. Cross, we weren't expecting you. Is there a problem? No problem. I wanted to see the floor, talk to some of the workers. Is now a good time? Lisa's surprise deepened. Of course. I'll get my notes, prepare briefing materials. I don't need briefing materials. I just want to walk the floor and talk to people. Can you introduce me to the shift supervisors? For the next 2 hours, Evelyn did something she'd almost never done. She actually looked at the people who built the products that carried her company's name. She talked to assembly workers about their processes, asked maintenance staff about what broke and why, listened to supervisors explain production challenges and quality control issues. She met a woman named Maria, who'd worked the same station for 12 years, who described the repetitive strain that came from inadequate ergonomic design. She talked with a young man named James, who explained how childcare costs ate most of his paycheck, making it nearly impossible to save for emergencies. She listened to Supervisor Carlos detail safety issues that got documented, but never quite prioritized for fixes. These were Noah's people, she realized. The ones serving systems that served others. The ones whose labor created value that flowed upward while they struggled for healthcare and childcare and basic economic security. By the time Evelyn left the facility, the sun had set, and her carefully constructed understanding of her company had developed significant cracks. She'd built an empire, yes. She'd created jobs and products and shareholder value, but she'd done it without ever really seeing the people at the foundation, without questioning whether the systems she'd designed actually worked for everyone, or just for those at the top. That night, alone in her too-quiet apartment, Evelyn opened her laptop and started writing. Not a memo or a strategic plan or a board presentation, just questions, observations, thoughts about what Cross Industries could become if it redirected its considerable resources toward solving problems that mattered to ordinary families. What if they designed products with real input from the people who'd use them daily, not just focus groups and market research? What if they built ergonomic improvements into manufacturing before workers developed injuries, not after? What if they offered childcare support and healthcare that actually covered emergencies like Lily's illness? The ideas flowed faster than she could type them, each one building on the last, creating a vision of a company that served all its stakeholders equally instead of prioritizing shareholders above everyone else. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. A text from Noah. Lily moved to regular pediatric ward, breathing much better. She wanted me to tell you thank you for the book. She's planning her questions for your next visit. Evelyn smiled and typed back, Tell her I'm preparing my answers, and congratulations on the move. That's wonderful progress. A moment later, It is. Because of you. We both know that. Evelyn stared at those words for a long time. She'd spent 15 years measuring success in quarterly reports and stock prices and market position. But sitting in a hospital room holding a child's hand, being thanked for a book by a 7-year-old who cared about sustainable systems, receiving a text from a father whose daughter was breathing better, that felt more like success than any merger or acquisition ever had. She returned to her laptop and kept writing, sketching out the framework of what Cross Industries could become if it chose to listen instead of dictate, to serve instead of extract, to measure value and impact on ordinary lives instead of just return on investment. It would take time. It would require convincing boards and shareholders and executives who'd built their careers on the old model. It would mean redirecting resources and challenging assumptions, and probably making enemies among people who benefited from the current system. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Evelyn felt excited about her company's future in a way that had nothing to do with quarterly projections. She was building something that mattered, or at least she was finally ready to try. The next morning, Evelyn called an emergency meeting with her executive team. 8 people assembled in the conference room, varying degrees of concern on their faces as they tried to understand why their CEO had summoned them with 4 hours' notice. "Thank you for coming," Evelyn said, remaining standing at the head of the table. "I know this is unusual, but I need to share some thoughts that can't wait for our normal strategic planning cycle." She pulled up a presentation she'd built in the early morning hours, but instead of the usual charts and projections, it showed photos from yesterday's facility visit. Maria at her workstation, James explaining childcare challenges, Carlos pointing out safety issues. "How many of you have spent significant time on our manufacturing floors?" Evelyn asked. A few hands rose uncertainly. "How many of you could name 5 assembly workers without checking employee records?" The hands dropped. "I couldn't either," Evelyn admitted. "Until yesterday, I'd visited that facility maybe twice a year, always for scheduled tours with prepared presentations. I'd never just walked the floor and talked to people about their actual lives, their actual challenges, what working for Cross Industries actually meant beyond a paycheck." She clicked to the next slide, showing the notes she'd taken during those conversations. "What I learned is that we've built a company that's incredibly efficient at creating value for shareholders, while being remarkably inefficient at creating value for the people who make everything we do possible. We have workers with repetitive strain injuries from equipment we could redesign. We have talented people leaving because they can't afford childcare. We have documented safety issues that don't get fixed because they're not critical enough to prioritize." David Chen, her COO, leaned forward. "Evelyn, are you suggesting we've been negligent?" "I'm suggesting we've been optimizing for the wrong metrics. We measure productivity and profit margins and market share. We don't measure whether our workers can afford health care when their children get sick, whether our systems create sustainable careers or just extract labor until people burn out, whether the value we create actually improves lives or just concentrates wealth." "With respect," said Margaret Wen, her CFO, "that's not how corporate finance works. Our fiduciary duty is to shareholders." "Our fiduciary duty is to create sustainable value," Evelyn corrected. "And I'm questioning whether extracting maximum short-term profit while ignoring worker well-being and community impact actually creates sustainable anything. What happens when we can't retain talent because people can't afford to work for us? What happens when our reputation becomes efficient but exploitative? What's the long-term value in that?" The room had gone very quiet. Finally, David said carefully, "What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing we fundamentally rethink how we measure success. I want to launch an initiative, call it Sustainable Stakeholder Value, or whatever marketing wants to brand it, that redesigns our systems to serve everyone, not just shareholders. Better healthcare, childcare support, ergonomic improvements, safety upgrades, profit-sharing models. I want to bring in people like our assembly workers to actually help design the products and systems they'll use. I want Cross Industries to be a company where everyone benefits from success, not just executives and investors." "That would cost millions," Margaret said flatly. "Initially, yes. Long-term, I believe it creates more value than it costs. Better retention means lower training expenses. Healthier workers mean fewer injury claims and better productivity. Actually, good healthcare means people don't avoid treatment until problems become critical." Evelyn paused. "And even if the numbers didn't work perfectly, even if profit margins decrease slightly, wouldn't it be worth it to build something that actually serves people instead of extracting from them?" The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Then David spoke again, his tone thoughtful. "You're talking about a fundamental cultural shift. That doesn't happen overnight, and it definitely doesn't happen without resistance." "I know, but I also know we have the resources, the expertise, and the influence to do this right if we commit. And I think doing this right is more important than protecting quarterly earnings." "The board will have questions," Margaret said. "Major questions. This kind of shift requires approval. And frankly, I'm not sure how you sell reduced profit margins for better worker conditions to people whose primary metric is return on investment. Then I'll figure out how to sell it. Or I'll face the consequences of pushing for change they don't support." Evelyn met each executive's eyes in turn. But I'm doing this, with board approval or without it. Because 3 weeks ago, someone showed me what actually matters, and I can't unsee it. She told them about Noah then. About the janitor who'd fixed a $4 million car, who'd walked away from genius to be present for his daughter, who'd sat in a hospital room for 4 days watching his child fight for breath while worrying about medical bills that could destroy them financially. About how Cross Industries' own insurance policy had failed an employee in crisis, how the system they'd designed had worked exactly as intended and had still been fundamentally inadequate. We employed this man for 3 years, Evelyn said quietly. Never knew what skills he possessed, never questioned whether our systems served him, never thought about whether his daughter could get sick and what that would mean for their lives. We were content to have him be invisible, to clean our floors and empty our trash and exist below our notice. And when crisis came, our response was to prepare termination paperwork because he missed a shift while his daughter was on a ventilator. The shame in the room was palpable. So yes, Evelyn continued, I'm proposing a fundamental shift because I don't want to run a company where talented people have to hide their abilities to find work-life balance. I don't want to run a company where employees face financial catastrophe when their children get sick. I don't want to measure success in ways that ignore whether we're actually creating value for everyone or just concentrating it at the top. David was the first to speak. What do you need from us? Honesty about challenges, creativity about solutions, willingness to rethink assumptions we've built careers on, and trust that even if this path isn't the easiest or most immediately profitable, it's the right one. Around the table, she saw executives processing, evaluating, coming to their own conclusions about whether to support this shift or resist it. It would take time for everyone to align. Some might never align. But Evelyn had made her choice, and she'd see it through regardless. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, moving from philosophy to practicalities. By the end, they had the skeleton of a plan: pilot programs for worker input on product design, healthcare coverage reviews, facility safety audits with actual commitment to implementing recommendations, childcare partnership exploration. It wasn't revolutionary yet, but it was a beginning. After everyone left, Evelyn sat alone in the conference room and called Noah. "How's Lily?" she asked when he answered. "Great, really great. Off oxygen completely, breathing on her own, eating actual food. Dr. Chen thinks maybe discharge by end of week if she continues improving." "That's wonderful. Tell her I'll visit tomorrow." "She'll be thrilled. She's been working on her questions. Fair warning, they're getting pretty complex." Evelyn smiled. "I can handle complex. Noah, I wanted to tell you something. I took your words seriously about pointing skills in the wrong direction, about building things that don't serve the people who need them most. I'm making changes at Cross Industries, big ones. We're redesigning our systems to actually serve all our stakeholders, not just shareholders." Noah was quiet for a moment. "That's a massive undertaking." "I know, but it's the right one. And I wanted you to know that you catalyzed this. Your choice to walk away, your willingness to be invisible rather than complicit in systems you couldn't reconcile. It showed me what integrity looks like. I want Cross Industries to operate with that kind of integrity." "Evelyn, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about my offer, about using your skills to help build something better. No pressure, no expectations about sacrificing what matters. Just an invitation to be part of creating change." "I'll think about it," Noah said softly. "I promise I'll really think about it." After they hung up, Evelyn gathered her materials and headed to her office. There was work to do, presentations to build, board members to convince, systems to redesign. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in 15 years, she was building something that felt like it mattered beyond quarterly reports. And that was worth fighting for. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning, 2 weeks after Lily's discharge from the hospital. Evelyn had spent those weeks building her case, gathering data, consulting with experts who specialized in stakeholder capitalism and sustainable business models. She'd visited 3 more Cross Industries facilities, talked with dozens more workers, documented problems, and potential solutions with the same meticulous attention she'd once reserved for acquisition strategies. The night before the meeting, she sat in her office reviewing her presentation one final time. Her phone buzzed with a text from Noah. "Lily wants to know if you're nervous about tomorrow. She says you shouldn't be because you're fighting for what's right, and that always matters, even when it's hard. Evelyn smiled and typed back, "Tell her that's exactly the reminder I needed. How's she doing?" "Amazing. Back at school, already caught up on everything she missed, driving her teachers crazy with questions about whether their classroom systems could be more efficient. She's herself again, just with more appreciation for breathing." "I'm glad. Tell her I'll visit this weekend?" "She'll hold you to that. Good luck tomorrow. Whatever happens, you're doing the right thing." Evelyn stared at those last words for a long time. Whatever happens, you're doing the right thing. It was the kind of certainty she'd spent 15 years avoiding, the kind of moral clarity that complicated quarterly projections and made board presentations less about numbers and more about values. But Noah was right. This was the right thing, regardless of outcome. The boardroom the next morning felt different than it had for hundreds of previous meetings. Same table, same chairs, same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, but Evelyn stood at the head of that table with a different purpose than she'd ever brought to this space before. 12 board members sat watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and concern. They'd received preliminary materials about her proposed stakeholder initiative, enough to know something significant was coming, but not enough to fully understand the scope. "Thank you all for being here," Evelyn began. "I know some of you flew in specifically for this meeting, and I appreciate that commitment. What I'm proposing today represents a fundamental shift in how Cross Industries operates, and it requires your full attention and ultimately your support." She pulled up her first slide, but instead of the usual financial charts, it showed a photo of Noah and Lily taken the day of her hospital discharge. Noah's arm was around his daughter's shoulders, and both of them were smiling with the relief of crisis survived. "This is Noah Reed and his daughter Lily," Evelyn said. "Noah has worked for Cross Industries for 3 years as part of our janitorial services. Lily is 7 years old, brilliant, and 2 weeks ago was fighting for her life in pediatric intensive care with pneumonia that wasn't responding to standard treatment. Their story is why we're here today." She walked them through everything: the garage incident, Noah's hidden expertise, his choice to walk away from engineering to be present for his daughter, Lily's illness, the medical bills that would have bankrupted them, the insurance policy Cross Industries provided that failed them exactly when they needed it most. "We employed a mechanical genius for 3 years and never knew it, because we'd created systems where talent has to hide to find work-life balance," Evelyn said. "We provided health insurance that was adequate for routine care, but catastrophically insufficient for the kind of emergency any family might face. We designed our workplace culture to prioritize productivity over people, efficiency over humanity, and shareholder value over every other kind of value." Richard Morrison, the board's longest-serving member, leaned forward. "Evelyn, this is clearly a moving story, but I'm not sure I understand how it translates to company policy. We can't redesign our entire business model based on one employee's experience." "You're right," Evelyn agreed. "We shouldn't redesign based on one experience. We should redesign based on the systematic patterns that one experience revealed. Noah's story isn't unique, it's emblematic. How many other talented people are we losing because they can't reconcile their skills with our values? How many families are one medical emergency away from financial catastrophe despite working full-time for us? How many workers are developing injuries from equipment we could redesign but haven't because it wasn't critical enough to prioritize?" She clicked to the next section of her presentation, showing data from her facility visits and worker interviews. The numbers told a story of systematic underinvestment in worker well-being, safety issues that persisted for years, healthcare gaps that forced employees to choose between treatment and rent, childcare costs that consumed entire paychecks. "Our current model optimizes for short-term profit extraction," Evelyn continued. "We squeeze maximum productivity from workers while minimizing investment in their well-being, justify it as fiduciary duty to shareholders, and accept high turnover and burnout as the cost of doing business. I'm proposing we stop accepting that cost." Jennifer Park, who chaired the compensation committee, spoke up. "What exactly are you proposing? Specifics, not philosophy." Evelyn had prepared for this. She spent the next 20 minutes detailing concrete initiatives: comprehensive health care that actually covered emergencies without bankrupting families, childcare partnerships and subsidies, ergonomic redesigns with worker input, profit-sharing models, safety upgrades with real accountability, collaborative product development that included assembly workers and maintenance staff. The initial investment is approximately $48 million, she said, putting the number on screen. That's across all facilities, all programs, full implementation over 18 months. In return, we project 20% reduction in turnover, 30% decrease in injury-related costs, significant improvements in productivity from workers who aren't fighting burnout and financial stress, and substantial enhancement of our reputation as an employer. $48 million for projected improvements, Richard said flatly. That's asking shareholders to accept reduced returns based on hopeful assumptions. It's asking shareholders to invest in sustainable value rather than extractive short-term profit, Evelyn corrected. Companies that treat workers as disposable resources eventually find themselves without quality workers. We're already seeing that in recruitment challenges and retention problems. This initiative addresses root causes instead of constantly managing symptoms. Margaret Wen, her own CFO, spoke next. Evelyn, I've reviewed these numbers extensively, and I support the general direction. But I have to be honest with the board. This does impact profit margins, at least initially, and possibly long-term if implementation costs exceed projections. We're talking about a 3 to 5% reduction in quarterly earnings for the first year. The room stirred. 3 to 5% might not sound significant to outsiders, but in this room, it represented millions of dollars and serious questions from shareholders. 3 to 5% reduction in quarterly earnings, Evelyn acknowledged, in exchange for building a company that attracts and retains the best talent, that innovates better because we're listening to people closest to our products, that doesn't face public scandals about worker conditions or healthcare failures. I believe that trade-off creates more value than it costs. But more fundamentally, I believe it's the right thing to do regardless of the accounting. And there it is, said Robert Chen, who managed the board's investment portfolio. Regardless of the accounting. Evelyn, our fiduciary duty is precisely about the accounting. We can't justify decisions that reduce shareholder value based on moral philosophy. Can't we? Evelyn challenged. What's our fiduciary duty when short-term profit maximization destroys long-term sustainability? What's our responsibility when our business model systematically harms the people who make everything we do possible? At what point does fiduciary duty become an excuse for exploitation? The room went very quiet. Evelyn had crossed a line, moving from business proposal to moral challenge. She could see board members calculating, evaluating, deciding whether to support this shift or resist it. Jennifer Park broke the silence. I want to hear from someone who's not in this room. You said Noah Reed was the catalyst for this proposal. Is he here? Evelyn felt her heart rate increase. He's not. I didn't want him to feel pressured or put on display. This isn't about making him perform his tragedy for your evaluation. I'm not asking him to perform anything, Jennifer said. I'm asking to hear directly from someone impacted by our current systems and your proposed changes. If we're making decisions that affect workers, shouldn't we actually listen to workers? It was a reasonable request, but Evelyn felt protective of Noah, unwilling to expose him to a room full of executives who might see him as data rather than a person. Before she could respond, there was a knock on the boardroom door. Evelyn's assistant Marcus appeared, looking apologetic. I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Cross, but Noah Reed is here. He says he'd like to speak to the board if that's appropriate. Evelyn's surprise must have shown on her face. I didn't call him. No, ma'am. He called me this morning and asked when your board meeting was scheduled, said he had something to contribute if the board was willing to hear it. Evelyn looked at her board members, reading their curiosity and calculation. Then she nodded. Please send him in. Noah entered the boardroom wearing the same gray uniform he'd worn the night he fixed the Phantom, and Evelyn realized he'd done that deliberately. Not trying to look like something he wasn't, not pretending to belong in executive spaces, just presenting himself exactly as he was. A janitor who cleaned their floors and had something to say. Thank you for seeing me, Noah said, his voice steady despite the intimidating setting. My name is Noah Reed. I clean this building 3 nights a week, and my daughter almost died 2 weeks ago because I couldn't afford the medical care she needed despite working full-time and having your company's health insurance. He had their complete attention now. Ms. Cross covered those bills, saved my job when I missed work to stay with Lily, sat with my daughter through the night so I could go home and sleep. She did things no employer is required to do. Things that probably don't make financial sense in spreadsheets and profit projections. And I'm here because I think you need to understand what those choices meant. Noah moved further into the room. No notes, no preparation, just speaking from the heart. When Lily got sick, I had a decision to make. Keep working and hope she'd be okay with neighbors checking on her, or stay with her and risk losing my job. That's not a choice anyone should have to make, but it's the choice your current system creates. When the medical bills started coming, I had another decision: pay for treatment and lose our apartment, or let the bills go to collections and destroy any financial future we might have. Again, not a choice anyone should face, but it's the reality your insurance design creates. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I used to work in engineering, high-level stuff, prestigious companies, the kind of career everyone says you should want. I was good at it, really good, but I was using that skill to make expensive things for wealthy people while my own family suffered from my absence. When my wife died and I had to choose between that career and being the father Lily needed, I walked away. Not because engineering is bad, but because I couldn't reconcile using my skills to serve systems that didn't serve people like me. "So you became a janitor," Richard Morrison said, and there was skepticism in his tone. "I became a father first," Noah corrected quietly. "Janitorial work was how I supported that priority. It let me be present, be stable, be there when Lily needed me. And it was honest work that served everyone equally: executives and assembly workers, management and maintenance. Everyone got clean floors and emptied trash. There's dignity in that kind of service." "But you're also the person who fixed Ms. Cross's car," Jennifer Park said. "That suggests your talents are being wasted." "My talents are being used exactly as I choose to use them," Noah said firmly. "I'm not wasted because I'm not maximizing my earning potential or climbing corporate ladders. I'm successful because my daughter knows I'll always show up for her, because I sleep well knowing my work doesn't contribute to systems that harm people like us, because I've chosen presence over advancement." He looked directly at Evelyn then, and there was something in his expression that made her breath catch. "But Ms. Cross asked me to think about whether I could use my skills in ways that align with my values while still being the father Lily needs. And after watching what she's trying to build, after seeing her actually listen to workers and redesign systems to serve people instead of extract from them, I think maybe I can. Not going back to the world I left, but helping build a different one." "Are you accepting employment?" Robert Chen asked, clearly trying to understand the implications. "I'm accepting an invitation to consult on how cross-industries can design products and systems that actually serve ordinary people. Part-time, flexible hours, focused on making sure worker voices are heard in development processes." Noah smiled slightly. "I'm still going to be Lily's dad first, but I think I can do both if the company genuinely commits to what Ms. Cross is proposing." "And if we don't commit?" Richard Morrison challenged. "If this board decides that $48 million in reduced shareholder value isn't justified by worker well-being initiatives?" Noah met his gaze steadily. "Then I'll go back to cleaning your floors, and you'll go back to not noticing the people who make your work possible, and nothing changes. But you'll know that you had a chance to build something better and chose quarterly earnings instead. I can live with my choices. Can you live with yours?" The silence that followed was profound. Noah had challenged them not with data or projections, but with simple moral clarity, and there was no comfortable response to that kind of directness. "Thank you, Mr. Reed," Jennifer Park said finally. "We appreciate your perspective." Noah nodded and turned to leave, but paused at the door. "One more thing. My daughter Lily wanted me to tell you something. She said that systems are just decisions made by people, and if the decisions are creating harm, different people can make different decisions. She's 7 years old, and she understands what some adults seem to have forgotten." After Noah left, the boardroom remained quiet for a long moment. Then Richard Morrison spoke, his tone less combative than before. "That was effective." "That was honest," Evelyn corrected. "Everything he said was true. We do create systems that force impossible choices. We do fail to see people who serve us daily. We do prioritize shareholder returns over human well-being. And we do have the power to make different decisions. The question," Margaret Wen said carefully, "is whether we have the will to make those decisions when they cost money and complicate our metrics." Evelyn looked around the table, reading each board member's expression, seeing them calculate and consider and come to their own conclusions. "I'm asking for your support," she said. But I want to be clear about something. If this board refuses to approve these initiatives, I'll implement what I can through executive authority, and I'll take the rest to shareholders directly. I'll stake my position as CEO on this vision for the company. Because Noah's right, I can live with my choices, and I need to be able to look at people like him and his daughter and know I did everything possible to build something better. You'd risk your position over this? Robert Chen asked, sounding genuinely surprised. I'd risk my position rather than keep building something I can no longer believe in, Evelyn said simply. 15 years ago, I started this company because I wanted to create value, solve problems, make things that mattered. Somewhere along the way, I lost track of who I was creating value for and what problems actually mattered. Noah helped me remember, and now that I remember, I can't unremember. I can't go back to optimizing for quarterly reports while ignoring whether we're serving people or exploiting them. Jennifer Park glanced around the table. I move that we vote on Ms. Cross's stakeholder initiative proposal as presented. All those in favor? Evelyn held her breath as hands began to rise. Jennifer's hand, Margaret's hand, 3 others, 6 votes in favor. Those opposed? 4 hands, including Richard Morrison's and Robert Chen's. 4 votes against. Abstentions? 2 board members kept their hands down, unwilling to commit either direction. Motion passes, Jennifer said. 6 in favor, 4 opposed, 2 abstentions. The stakeholder initiative is approved for implementation as proposed, with quarterly reviews to assess impact and adjust as necessary. Evelyn felt something release in her chest, tension she hadn't fully acknowledged she was carrying. Thank you. I know this wasn't an easy decision for everyone, and I appreciate the trust you're placing in this direction. Don't make us regret it, Richard Morrison said, but there was something almost like respect in his tone. Prove that serving people and serving shareholders aren't mutually exclusive. I will, Evelyn promised. We will. The meeting continued for another hour, working through implementation details and review processes and all the practical mechanics of turning philosophy into operational reality. But the essential decision had been made. Cross Industries was changing direction, and there was no going back. After everyone left, Evelyn sat alone in the boardroom and called Noah. The board approved it, she said when he answered. Full implementation, $48 million investment, everything I proposed. We're actually doing this. That's incredible, Evelyn. Congratulations. I couldn't have done it without you. Your testimony, your willingness to share your story, your challenge about living with our choices, that's what tipped the balance. I just told the truth. You're the one building something with it. We're building something with it, Evelyn corrected. I meant what I said about the consulting work. I need your expertise, Noah. I need someone who understands what ordinary families need, who can hear what systems are saying, who won't let us drift back into optimizing for the wrong things. Then I accept. Officially. Part-time, flexible hours, Lily comes first, but I'll help you build something that actually serves people. Thank you. That means everything. Means... There was a pause, then Noah said, Lily wants to talk to you. Is that okay? Of course. A moment later, Lily's voice came through the phone, bright with excitement. Evelyn, Dad says you won, that the board approved your proposal. We won, Evelyn corrected. Your dad helped make it happen, and you helped too. Your message about systems being decisions made people think hard about what decisions they wanted to make. That's because it's true. Systems aren't like weather or gravity. They're not natural forces we can't change. They're just choices, and we can choose differently if we want to. You're absolutely right, and that's exactly what Cross Industries is going to do. Choose differently. Good. Because the old way wasn't working very well for lots of people. Emma's mom works at your factory, and she says the insurance doesn't cover her dad's medicine, so they have to skip doses sometimes. That's a bad system. Evelyn felt her chest tighten. What's Emma's mom's name? Mrs. Rodriguez, Maria Rodriguez. She works in assembly. I remember her. I talked with her during my facility visit. Evelyn made a note on her tablet. Tell Emma that's going to change. The new healthcare coverage will be comprehensive enough that her dad won't have to skip medicine anymore. Really? You can promise that? I can promise that I'll make it a priority. Some things take time to fix, but we're committed to fixing them. Okay, that's good. Emma will be happy. Lily paused. Are you coming to visit this weekend? You said you would. I am. Saturday afternoon, if that works for you and your dad. It works. I want to show you my project. I've been designing a system to help families like ours, people who work regular jobs but don't have much money. It's a device that helps fix common household problems without needing to hire expensive repair people. Dad says it could actually work. I'd love to see it. Bring all your notes and designs. I will. See you Saturday. Noah came back on the line. Sorry she gets excited about her projects. Don't apologize. I love her enthusiasm. And Noah, I want to see that device design. If it's viable, maybe it's something Cross Industries could develop and distribute. Not for profit, just as a service to communities that need it. You're serious? Completely serious. Your daughter sees problems others miss and imagines solutions that serve people who usually get ignored. That's exactly the kind of innovation we should be supporting. After ending the call, Evelyn stood and walked to the boardroom windows, looking out at the city spread below. Somewhere in that urban landscape, Maria Rodriguez was working an assembly shift, probably worrying about her husband's medication costs. Somewhere, families were making impossible choices between healthcare and rent, between being present for their children and keeping their jobs, between survival and dignity. But Cross Industries was changing, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. And that change started with listening, really listening, to people like Noah and Lily, Maria, and her family, all the workers who'd been invisible for too long. The next 6 months transformed Cross Industries in ways that went far beyond policy changes. The new healthcare coverage launched first, comprehensive enough that families like the Rodriguezes could afford necessary medications without choosing between treatment and groceries. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Workers who'd been quietly suffering through health issues finally sought treatment, and the decrease in serious complications saved more money than the increased coverage cost. The childcare partnerships came next, and suddenly parents like James from the manufacturing floor could actually save money instead of having entire paychecks consumed by care costs. Productivity increased as workers stopped being distracted by childcare stress and emergency coverage scrambles. The ergonomic redesigns, developed with extensive input from workers like Maria, reduced repetitive strain injuries by 40% in the first 3 months. Workers who'd been quietly working through pain finally had equipment designed for human bodies instead of maximum speed, and the result was both more sustainable and more productive. But the most significant change was cultural. Cross Industries began genuinely listening to the people who made everything possible, involving assembly workers in product development, maintenance staff in facility design, frontline employees in process improvements. The innovations that emerged were practical, elegant, and consistently better than what executives had designed in isolation. Noah became central to that cultural shift, working part-time, always prioritizing Lily, but showing up consistently to consult on projects. He brought both technical expertise and moral clarity to development processes. He asked questions that made engineers uncomfortable. Who is this designed to serve? What happens to people who can't afford it? Are we solving real problems or creating expensive solutions to problems nobody actually has? His presence reminded everyone that the goal wasn't just profit, but genuine service. Not just innovation, but innovation that mattered to ordinary lives. Lily's household repair device became a Cross Industries community initiative. The company developed her design, giving her full credit and a scholarship fund for her future education, and distributed it freely through community centers and family resource organizations. It wasn't profitable in traditional terms, but the goodwill and reputation enhancement proved invaluable. 6 months after the board meeting, Evelyn stood in the main manufacturing facility watching Maria Rodriguez train new workers on ergonomic equipment that had been redesigned with her input. The older woman moved with confidence, her earlier pain and strain visibly diminished, her expertise finally recognized and valued. "Ms. Cross," Maria said, noticing Evelyn's presence, "I wanted to thank you. My husband's doing so much better now that we can afford his full medication. And this new equipment, my shoulders don't hurt anymore at the end of shifts. These changes, they're changing our lives." "You helped design these changes," Evelyn reminded her. "You and the others who actually use these systems daily. We're just finally listening." "We'll keep listening. We've got more ideas." "I'm counting on that." Later that evening, Evelyn drove to Noah's apartment for a dinner Lily had insisted on hosting. The building looked different now that Evelyn knew the people who lived there, not just structures housing invisible workers, but homes where families built lives and children dreamed futures, and ordinary people did extraordinary things daily. Noah answered the door, and Evelyn could smell something delicious cooking. Behind him, the small apartment was tidy and warm, walls covered with Lily's artwork and school projects, and the calendar marking her father's workdays with careful drawings. "Welcome," Noah said, smiling. "Fair warning, Lily's been cooking all afternoon and she's very proud of her menu." "I can't wait." Lily appeared from the kitchen wearing an apron that was too large for her face serious with concentration. "Everything's almost ready. Did you bring the reports I asked for?" Evelyn held up a folder. "Quarterly impact assessments, just like you requested. Healthcare utilization, injury reduction, productivity metrics, worker satisfaction surveys, everything we're tracking." "Good. I want to analyze them during dessert." Noah laughed. "Most 7-year-olds want to play games during dessert." "I'm not most 7-year-olds, and this is important." Lily turned to Evelyn. "Emma's dad is doing so much better now. He hasn't had to skip any medicine, and he's even talking about going back to work part-time. Their whole family is different because of what you changed." "Because of what we all changed together," Evelyn said. "Your ideas, your dad's expertise, workers like Emma's mom sharing what they needed. I just made it possible." They ate dinner at Noah's small table. Pasta that Lily had made from scratch with determined focus, salad, bread, simple food prepared with care. The conversation ranged from Lily's latest school project to Noah's work on a new product development initiative to Evelyn's ongoing board negotiations about expanding the stakeholder programs. It felt like family in a way Evelyn's expensive dinners and exclusive restaurants never quite achieved. Not because of the food or the setting, but because of the genuine care everyone brought to the table, the attention they paid to each other's words, the way they built on each other's ideas instead of competing for airtime. After dessert, Lily spread Evelyn's reports across the table and began analyzing them with the seriousness of a graduate student. She asked questions about methodology, challenged assumptions about causation versus correlation, suggested additional metrics that might reveal patterns the current tracking missed. "You should be measuring relationship quality between workers and management," Lily said, pointing at the satisfaction surveys. "Not just whether people are satisfied, but whether they feel heard, respected, valued as experts in their own work. That's what actually predicts whether improvements sustain or slip back." "That's brilliant," Evelyn said, making notes. "You're absolutely right. We're measuring outcomes, but not the relationship dynamics that create those outcomes. Also, you should compare your facilities against each other to see which ones are implementing most effectively. Then the good ones can teach the struggling ones instead of everyone trying to figure it out separately." Noah was watching his daughter with undisguised pride. "When did you become a management consultant?" "I'm not a consultant. I'm just thinking about systems." Lily looked at Evelyn seriously. "Systems are only as good as the people implementing them and the relationships between those people. You can have perfect policies, but if managers don't actually respect workers, or if workers don't trust managers, nothing really changes." "You're teaching me things I should have learned years ago," Evelyn admitted. "That's okay. Learning is what matters, not when you learn it. Dad taught me that." They talked long into the evening, three people from completely different worlds finding common ground in questions about how to build systems that actually served people. Eventually, Lily's eyes started drooping despite her efforts to stay focused, and Noah carried her to her room for bed. Evelyn stood in the small living room, looking at the calendar on the refrigerator, at Lily's drawings of buildings and cars and machines, at the life Noah had built through presence and attention, and choosing what mattered over what the world said he should want. When Noah returned, he found her still standing there. "Penny for your thoughts," he said quietly. "I was thinking about success, about what it actually means." Evelyn gestured around the apartment. "A year ago, I would have looked at this and seen limitation. Small space, modest furniture, a life constrained by economic reality. But now I see something different. I see a father who chose to be present for his daughter. I see a child growing up with security and attention and the knowledge that she's the most important thing in her father's world. I see success that has nothing to do with quarterly reports." "And your success?" Noah asked. "How does that look now?" "Different than before. Better, I think." Cross Industries is changing, genuinely changing. We're serving all our stakeholders, not just shareholders. We're listening to workers and designing with their input and measuring impact on actual lives. It's harder than the old way, and the profit margins are smaller, but it feels like building something that matters. It is building something that matters. You're creating a model other companies can follow, proving that serving people and serving shareholders aren't mutually exclusive. We're creating that model, Evelyn corrected. I couldn't do it without you, without Lily's questions, without workers like Maria sharing their expertise. That's the real change, recognizing that the best answers come from collective wisdom, not individual brilliance. Noah smiled. You've come a long way from the CEO who stood in a garage surrounded by engineers, assuming expertise came with credentials. I had a good teacher, a janitor who listened when everyone else was looking at data. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, then Noah asked, "What happens next? For you? For Cross Industries?" "We keep building. We expand the stakeholder programs to all facilities. We develop more community initiatives like Lily's device. We keep measuring and learning and adjusting. It won't be perfect. Change never is. But it'll be genuine." "And personally, what happens next for Evelyn Cross?" Evelyn thought about her too-quiet apartment, her calendar full of meetings, the empire she'd built through relentless focus on growth and efficiency. "I don't know yet. I'm still figuring out what balance looks like, what presence means when you're responsible for thousands of people's livelihoods. But I know it looks different than before. It includes things like having dinner with friends, making time for conversations that don't advance quarterly objectives, measuring success in changed lives instead of just changed profit margins." "That sounds like a good direction." "It is. Thanks to you and Lily showing me what actually matters." Noah walked her to the door, and as Evelyn was leaving, he said, "You know what Lily told me after you left the hospital that first night? She said you were the kind of person who kept promises even when it was hard, and those were the best kind of people to know." She was right. She usually is. Yeah, she usually is. Evelyn drove home through the city, but instead of going straight to her apartment, she found herself pulling into the parking garage beneath Cross Industries headquarters. The building was mostly empty at this hour, just security and night shift workers maintaining the infrastructure that made everything else possible. She took the elevator down to the basement level, to the private garage where the Phantom still sat in its designated spot. The car looked exactly as it had that night 6 months ago. Perfect lines, midnight blue paint, mechanical precision in every detail. But it meant something different now. It wasn't just a symbol of power or a statement of excellence. It was a reminder of the moment everything changed, when a janitor's daughter noticed wrongness that expensive experts missed, when listening proved more valuable than credentials, when genuine expertise revealed itself in service and humility rather than titles and positions. Evelyn ran her hand along the car's hood, feeling the cool metal beneath her palm. Somewhere in the engine compartment, a single bolt had been adjusted 3/4 of a turn, a tiny correction that had fixed what sophisticated diagnostics couldn't identify. Sometimes the most complex problems weren't solved by louder voices or bigger titles or more advanced technology. Sometimes they were solved by people who paid attention, who listened carefully, who cared enough to notice wrongness even when everyone else insisted everything was fine. That lesson had cost her nothing and changed everything. Evelyn locked the garage and took the elevator to her office. Even at this hour, there was work waiting, reports to review, decisions to make, the endless demands of running a company. But now those demands felt different. They weren't just obligations to shareholders, but opportunities to serve everyone the company touched, chances to build systems that actually worked for ordinary families. She worked until midnight, then drove to her apartment and slept better than she had in years. The next morning brought news that the quarterly earnings report showed exactly what Margaret Wen had predicted, a 3% decrease in profit margins compared to the previous year. Some shareholders complained, some analysts downgraded their ratings, some competitors pointed to Cross Industries as an example of misguided priorities. But worker retention had improved by 22%. Injury costs had decreased by 40%. Productivity was up across all facilities. Community reputation had never been stronger. And recruitment applications had tripled, with talented people specifically citing the stakeholder initiatives as reasons they wanted to work for Cross Industries. The numbers told a more complex story than quarterly profits alone could capture. They showed a company transforming from extraction to service, from exploitation to genuine care, from treating workers as expenses to recognizing them as essential partners in creating value. It was working, imperfectly, gradually, but genuinely working. 6 months later, Lily turned 8 with a party that included Emma and a dozen other children, all of them running through a community center that Cross Industries had helped renovate. Noah watched his daughter laugh and play and be fully, completely healthy, and felt grateful in ways he couldn't quite articulate. Evelyn attended the party, bringing a gift she'd carefully chosen, an advanced engineering kit designed for young minds who asked difficult questions and imagined better systems. Lily's eyes lit up when she opened it, already planning projects and innovations. "This is perfect," Lily said, hugging Evelyn. "Thank you for seeing me, for seeing us." "Thank you for teaching me to see differently," Evelyn replied. As the party continued around them, Noah and Evelyn stood together watching children play. And Noah said quietly, "A year ago I was cleaning your garage and you were preparing for a merger. Neither of us could have predicted this." "No," Evelyn agreed, "but I'm glad this is where we ended up. Building something that actually matters, measuring success in changed lives instead of just changed stock prices, learning that the most valuable expertise often comes from unexpected places. And now? Now we keep building, keep listening, keep choosing to serve people instead of extract from them. It's harder than the old way, but it's better. It's right." Lily called to them then, wanting to show her father and Evelyn a game she'd invented, and they went to join the celebration, 3 people whose lives had intersected in a garage and changed each other in ways that rippled outward to touch thousands of others. The Phantom still sat in its designated spot in Cross Industries' private garage, perfect and pristine. A $4 million machine that ran flawlessly thanks to a 3/4 turn of a single bolt. It stood as a reminder that sometimes the most complex problems had simple solutions if you knew how to listen. That expertise could wear a janitor's uniform. That choosing presence over ambition could be the greatest success of all. And in the years that followed, as Cross Industries continued transforming and Lily continued growing and Noah continued being the father who chose his daughter over everything else the world said mattered, that lesson echoed through everything they built. Systems were just decisions made by people. And when people chose differently, when they listened carefully, when they measured success and lives changed, instead of profits maximized, everything became possible. The most important things weren't always loud or obvious or credentialed. Sometimes they whispered in the sounds nobody else noticed, in the questions children asked, in the choices made by ordinary people who refused to accept that exploitation was inevitable. And sometimes, if you were willing to really listen, those whispers changed everything.